Yeah. Anybody want any Japanese pears? They're on too at my yard.
I'm gonna come snag some when you're not looking.
Come
I have
grab
so
them.
Me
much
too.
fruit. I don't know what to do with it
Come
anymore.
grab them.
I never have that problem of having too much fruit.
Oh heavens, when you've bottled like 3 batches of applesauce and pineapples and then peaches and pears, I'm a little out on fruit right now. I don't care.
I juiced grapes on Sunday and I got a couple gallons of grape juice.
Nice.
On the Lord's Day. Is
Yeah,
that
pear.
You know, you just throw them in a pot and the juice just falls out the bottom. It's
True.
not labor intensive.
like
Steamed
Jesus?
juice as well.
water to wine?
That's right.
There you go.
Council.
And if you need to remember this conversation, it is live on YouTube right now. So
There you go.
you guys can go back and listen to that part later.
I want that in the minutes.
Council.
I'll put it in the minutes too.
Oh, yeah, we are being recorded and are we broadcasting?
Yes.
Looks like it.
We are broadcasting. Okay. On behalf of the city council and the city staff of Syracuse City, I'd like to welcome you to our special meeting this evening and also a work session. This meeting is being held electronically in accordance with House Bill 5002 of the Open and Public Meetings Act amendment signed into law on June 25th of 2020, pursuant to the written determination of the chair, finding that conducting the meeting with an anchor location presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present due to the infectious and potentially dangerous nature of COVID-19 virus. So we're going to proceed. We welcome those of you who've joined us with Zoom and those of you who are listening in through our YouTube channel. I've asked Lisa Bingham if she would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and then Jordan Savage if he would lead us in prayer.
Okay, please stand. Repeat. I pledge allegiance to the
pledge allegiance to the flag of
United
the United
States,
States of America,
to the
to the
republic
republic for which it stands, one nation,
under
under
God,
God,
all.
indivisible, with liberty and justice
for all.
for all.
Our Father in heaven, we are truly grateful to be gathered together today to discuss the affairs of the city. We are grateful for the opportunities we have and for the protections we receive. Please bless us that we can be wise in our decisions, that we can be mindful of the citizens around us, and that we can be able to know how to best serve them. We are grateful for the opportunities we have to serve, and please bless us with wisdom to be able to make decisions that will be beneficial to both present and future citizens of the city. Grateful for the small mercies we've seen as we take care of each other, and please bless us that we can know how to best serve one another. We are grateful for the blessings we have, and this we pray in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Council, I'm going to call for an adoption of the agenda that we have in our special session. We only have 2 action items, so I'd entertain a motion to adopt that agenda with those 2 items.
So moved.
I have a motion by Dave. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Corinne. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Cassie, would you record that as unanimous? Item 2 is the approval of the minutes of August 25th, both a work session and a special meeting. Is there any discussion on those items?
No.
Hearing and seeing none, I would welcome a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I motion we approve the minutes of August 25th work session and August 25th special meeting.
I have a first. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Lisa. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, hearing none, we'll record that as unanimous, Cassie. Item number 3, a public hearing regarding the issuance of approximately 26 million of general obligation bonds and any potential economic impact that the improvements, facilities, or properties financed in whole or in part with the proceeds of the bonds may have on the private sector. Steve, are you going to lead us through this one? You give it, Steve or Brody, one of you?
Mayor, do you want me to just introduce it real quickly?
Yes, would you please?
Okay, so this is a statutory requirement as part of the intent to call a special election to consider the issuance of general obligation bonds. The governing body is required to hold a public hearing, and the statement from the law is that you are required to allow for public input regarding the issuance of the GO bonds and the impact that the bonding activities and subsequent projects could have on the private sector. So we've just worked with bond counsel to get this noticed as required by that law, and no action is required by the city council at the conclusion of the public hearing, but we just do need to include in the record that we have opened and allowed for public comment and then closed the public hearing.
Okay, and instruct me, Cassie, earlier you said we had not received any public comment to this issue in written form before 5 o'clock, is that correct?
Yeah, correct. I have not received any public comment regarding any item on an agenda tonight.
All right. Okay, with that said, I will now declare that we're in public hearing, and those that have joined us through Zoom, we would welcome any comment from the public. We'd ask you to state your name and place of residence, and then we'll give you 3 minutes to address the council in this hearing. So we're now in public hearing, and I would, if you would raise your hand in the participant window, it'll be helpful to me to see who is responding.
Mayor, I don't see any raised hands in
I
the
don't-
participant list.
I don't see any either. Thank you. Hearing and seeing none, I will close the public hearing and declare that we have held this public hearing and we invited comment from the public. With there being no further action on this, council, I would now recess us into a convention of our work session meeting and refer all to the list of items that we are going to discuss in our work session this evening. Item number B is public comment again. And again, Cassie, you said that there were none that melded themselves with you by 5 p.m. in this issue either, right?
Correct.
Okay, so I will entertain anybody who has joined us through the Zoom meeting to if you have public comment on any issue, then we would love to hear that. If you'd like to address the council, we'd give you 3 minutes. If you state your name and place of residence, we would love to hear from you. So again, if you would go to the participants list and raise your hand. Okay, hearing and seeing none, I will close public comment. There will for this evening. Brody, we're at item number C. Cassie, did you have something for me?
Nope, I don't think that was me. Sorry.
Okay. Cassie, would you introduce Elizabeth to us?
Sorry, I assume you mean Corinne.
Corinne, yes.
Oh,
No,
I
what,
can,
what's happening?
I can introduce Elizabeth. Sorry.
Okay.
Thanks,
So,
Brody.
okay, that'd be great. I'm just meeting Elizabeth too, so thank you very much.
Yeah, I would like,
I figured this might be Corinne's first time meeting Elizabeth. So, yeah,
did I say Corinne? I
Yep.
thought I said Brody.
no, yeah. We'll just say you said Brody.
Okay,
Let's meet her. So everybody, hi. So this is Elizabeth. She is our new museum curator, and we're happy to have her on board. She's got a graduate degree in history and a passion for things of the past. And I had the opportunity to meet her and talk with her a few days ago before she got her feet wet here. And so she's going to be doing a lot of the museum work and also a little bit of the communications work that we do. Elizabeth, if you want to just take a couple minutes and just introduce yourself to the council and a little bit about yourself, and maybe it looks like you've got your cat with us tonight.
Yes, she's really wanting my attention right now. Luckily, my puppy is put away downstairs, so he won't be bothering us. But hi, I'm Elizabeth. She's also rubbing her face on my laptop. I'm originally from Kansas. I moved to Utah to start my graduate degree in history at the U. There I kind of focused on US air and atomic warfare, so like World War II, Cold War kind of stuff. I had interned at the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum at their curatorial department, and I also interned at Hill Aerospace Museum. So I have a lot of museum experience, and I'm super happy to be here and to help the Syracuse Museum grow and help it thrive in the way that I hope to see it thrive. And thank you for having me.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Nice to have you.
Council,
So
any
excited.
questions? Any questions for Elizabeth?
No, that's a lot of experience. I mean, we are glad to have you. We got some, I heard Smithsonian, Hill Air Force Base. So sounds like we've really got an awesome catch here. So thank you.
I hope so, but thank you.
When are you planning on having the museum board meetings? I just
We
make
are
sure
having
I-
them
Sorry.
the first Tuesday of the month. We skipped this month because it was my second day and I still
Yes.
didn't know what I was doing. So we will have the next one October 6th at 1 p.m. And we're still
Yes.
deciding that location, but I think it will be outside the museum or maybe inside, and we'll space it out a bit more.
Okay. We've had it at the community center before, so it could be more spread out. So it's your call on that, though.
There's a retirement party that morning, so
Oh,
I'm not sure or something. I'm
okay.
not sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll look for your email or something. It's all good. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, welcome aboard, Elizabeth. We're welcome you here.
Thank you.
And the only thing I know about Kansas is that's where Dorothy wanted to get home to.
Yup.
So
Or,
Elizabeth,
University of Kansas, that's where I went. So if you like the Jayhawks, you'll be a good friend of mine.
How do you pronounce your last name?
It's Najim. So it's Arabic and it means star.
Perfect. So I was just looking on the agenda as Saiz, or
That's a long story. That
That's
was my
okay.
married name, but I'm literally in the process of switching back to my maiden
Okay.
name. COVID's not making that easy. So you will probably see Elizabeth Seiss for a lot of stuff in the next few weeks. So I'm sorry about that.
that's okay. So you've made him.
Yes.
But do you prefer which one?
Najim.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Just to clarify. All right.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you for coming. I thought it was
Yes.
important that we see your face. We're pretty proud of that
Yes.
museum.
Thank you so much for having me.
And we hope it plays a big part of our economic development plan. So thank
I'm
you.
trying. So
for
hopefully.
Thank you for stepping to the helm. Let's move on, council. Item number D, a discussion regarding proposed amendments to the storm drain impact fee analysis, the IFA, and impact fee facilities plan, the IFFP. And is this Steve or Brody or Robert? Which?
I'll take it, Mayor.
yeah,
Okay,
Steve,
thanks,
start.
Steve.
Yeah.
So we're just in the process of updating our stormwater impact fee. We did this with our transportation impact a couple months back, if you remember. And we pulled a few projects forward to put it in our 5-year plan to make it impact fee eligible. That's what we're doing again with the stormwater. We had a few projects that were in the master plan, but weren't in the 5-year window, so we couldn't spend money on them. And so this update is pulling those projects forward and making a few amendments. I think it's project 17 through 22. There are some slight modifications in some of those as well. With those changes, the fee would increase. You can see there, $73.98 is the current fee per acre, would increase to $8,967 per acre for all uses. Doesn't matter if it's commercial or residential. Along with that, if we went through the process of approving this amendment, because the fee would increase, we would have to wait a 90-day protest period before that fee was enacted. So if we were to move forward and approve this on the 13th of October, then we'd wait the 90 days before that became effective.
So January.
Any additions to that, Brody or Robert?
I don't have any.
Okay. Corinne, would you lead us out on the discussion of this?
Well, as far as I can tell, it's pretty well spelled out that we need to cover the real costs of these, and it looks pretty good. It doesn't look like too much of a raise either compared to what it normally is, so I'm good with it.
Okay. Can I come across the top of my screen, Lisa?
Sure. I agree with Corinne. I think that it's important that we are covering the costs of the services, and if we know what happens when we get behind on this sort of thing. And so it is comparatively small in relative to what we do with it. So I didn't see any red flags.
Okay. David?
This is the right time to do it because after we endure the waiting period, we'll be in that kind of lull that we have at the first of the year before applications come in. So that gives us I think the timing is perfect is all.
Okay. Jordan?
No, I thought it was good. I do think it's funny that we've had a storm. It still says that the last time we updated this was in 2007. I think we've done it a couple times since then.
I think you said 2014 too on one of them, didn't
Yeah,
it?
so other than those inconsistencies and it's being a little outdated, and I thought it was the meat of the document was accurate, and I think that's really what we're approving tonight, so I'm good with it.
Seth?
Yeah, just based on it looks like it's based on an updated analysis, so I'm good with it.
Are you, council, can we put this on the consent calendar?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
All right.
You're gonna have to have a public hearing, I believe, because it's a fee increase.
Okay, then it won't.
So
Okay, sorry. Cassie, would you put that on the agenda for our November business meeting?
Yep.
Okay, let's go. I'd like maybe either Lisa or Corinne to talk to us a little bit about their visit with two residents. Could you do that regarding the pathway? One of you?
Sure. Whichever.
Corinne, you go ahead.
Okay. Well, we received some calls. You know, we know that we've discussed this before, but just because of Mr. Acer, I can't remember.
RC.
RC, sorry. Anyway, he wants to make sure that his neighbor is taken care of, and apparently he didn't get a chance to speak about it. And so there's some concerns with the reducing that front fence to 3 feet because what is his side fences are slatted, and he's worried about, you know, all that traffic right there looking into his backyard. And where we've reached a pretty good compromise with everybody involved, I thought, to me, it was, let's make a compromise with him too. So if we can possibly reconsider this amendment, or excuse me,
Ordinance.
thank you. Then maybe we can, especially where this is such a one-off, so odd in our city right now, and it'd be the one time we have to worry about it. That was my feeling on it. And anyway, go for it, Lisa, if you have anything else to add.
Well, so we met with them, and RC wanted to make sure Luis was taken care of, and he felt, and we discussed too before, that the COVID issue has made it difficult to have real discussions sometimes, that where we hear from everyone involved or that we really can fully discuss things. So I thought it was important that we hear what they had to say. And after we discussed it with them, we came up with 3 possible solutions. One was to completely change the ordinance and get rid of it. And another one was to surplus the property. And then the third was to actually just change the square or the footage of the fence line. So I believe we had it rewritten to 50, and we decided that would be the least difficult to change the the ordinance to be 110, I believe is what Noah came up with. We kind of basically just measured that wall. And that allows RC to put his fence up to keep his family protected, and allows Luis, who is a young man with a young family, who when he goes out of town on occasion, he needs to feel like his property is protected as well. And it was worrisome to him to have the requirement of removing the fence along the frontage of that alleyway. So after discussing it with the landowners who are directly impacted with this, and they wanted to be good neighbors, and we want to try and help the neighbors who appreciate that walkway. So we felt the best compromise for everyone was to remove the very beginning of the fence that is on city property that is just ours, that doesn't even butt up against Luis's property. Allow him to keep his fence on his property line that goes along from his grass to the back of his yard, and then allow RC to put up his fence. So yeah, we realize there are about two alleys like this in the whole city. So it's not opening a can of worms. It's not something that we're dealing with often. But one other thing that kind of is hard to hear is we had said, you know, if they just done this without going about it properly, we probably wouldn't have done anything about it. And so I hate to have it be punitive when they go about it through the proper channels. So I feel like this is a great solution to have Luis feel protected, RC feel protected, and have that alley, that walkway connecting two neighborhoods to stay there.
And I would just add that with the reassurance from the attorney that our liability is very minimal, that
yes,
it was worth revisiting to see if you guys would be in favor of changing that again.
And I did with
one more
Paul.
vote.
Yeah, I met with Paul and I met with Noah on that after we had discussed it with the landowners, and they were all under the same umbrella of understanding.
Council, I'm going to come across on my screen too. David, could I get your feedback?
Well, I disagree that no one was given or that anyone lacked the opportunity to come and talk about this, because we have talked about this for years now. The council has changed a couple of members since the first time we talked about this. It's been that long ago. So there's been plenty of opportunity for people to come forward and have their say. I think we did the best thing that we could have for the city. I think that we've ruled on this more than once, and I think that we need to let it stand. The citizens, I recognize that we're going to try to make a case that says we're not liable for something terrible that happens, but that doesn't change the fact that there are people who won't feel safe here, and we should do our best. If we're going to control it in any way, then we should do our best to make it feel as safe as possible for everyone. And, you know, I'm okay if we got rid of this property. I don't see a need for it. I said that when we discussed it the last time. That was an option that was acceptable to me. But if we're going to keep it, we need to do our very best. Otherwise, I really don't want to be the people that they talk about and say, why didn't they fix this the first time? Because we know that this needs to be different.
Just a point of clarification, the neighbor to the north, he tried to speak up, but because he was blocked by Zoom, was not allowed to comment. So just an FYI on that. And then the last time we talked about it, he didn't live there yet, years ago. There we go. All right.
Dave, I hear you say you would like to retain the status quo.
I think that we've ruled on this, and I don't want to keep ruling on this. We'll keep ruling on things until, you know, everybody's happy. But I just think at some point we have to go with what we voted on.
Okay, Jordan.
I agree with much of that, simply because I just hate going back and reconsidering the same thing over and over again. That being said, I would be willing. I think the ordinance we did it doing based on our best understanding of what the situation allowed. What I would be willing to do is only take down the fence on the city property and grandfather in RC's, or not, Luis's side of the fence, and let RC build his fence, and this would just be a non-compliant walkway, which we will have anyway, and just grandfather in that section.
Yeah,
But again, but I think it
Clear, I
does
think
need to
that is
remain
on
at
city
50
property.
feet.
the reason it's not grandfathered in is because it's actually butting right up against city property, so it's not,
It is actually on city property.
yeah, so it's not, because it was there when he moved in, but it is city property because that was the end of the development.
Well,
And
I
so-
would be,
Yeah, it's basically being grandfathered in, just, it can't be called that, so the ordinance has to change. That's what I talked with Paul about.
But then
so
we are talking about more than one instance, because how many other things in the city are there now that, you know, if we have to rule on what's on city property, that's what we do.
Well,
I
and
don't
here's,
know that because somebody abuts city property, we suddenly give them all of the say in the matter.
no, when I spoke to Paul, he said, we are not in the business of, once an ordinance is changed, of going back and retrofitting all of the properties pre-existing before that ordinance. So he said, this is very common to have a new ordinance come up that does not affect previous lands or uses or things that are existing already. But because we tried to do a grandfathering in for this specific location, and because it is directly on city property, we'd have to move the fence over by a few inches, which just doesn't make sense and
Well-
seems nonsensical.
So my recommendation is to remove the fence up to where the sidewalk meets his yard, which is just a few feet back. And this would just live as in non-compliance, but I don't see a reason to make an ordinance that I don't agree with. I think 50 feet is probably a good length, and this would just be a non-compliant walkway that we'd live with. But I don't see a reason to move it to 110 feet for this one walkway.
That was what it was suggested that we do, that we change the ordinance. So if that's something we can do, I'm in favor of that, Jordan.
It's because Paul was, if RC went to put in his fence in his backyard, then he could be stopped by the city being in non-compliance with the ordinance.
So that's where I'm a little so once it gets back that far and we take it down, is that not no longer, isn't that no longer a walkway at that point?
Paul, can you weigh in?
I just need to see the picture. I can't remember anymore.
Yeah. The concern is the fence on the south side is not up yet. And so if the ordinance says you can do this if there's so many feet till the next gap in the fence, and that gap doesn't exist, then he's not able to put up that fence. So if we want to keep the fence as is, or if you want to shorten it or whatever, the plan I think was to tear it down to so it was a 50-foot essentially gap, or fence, and then he'd be able to install on the south side. So yeah, it's not so much affecting the fence on the north side and his fencing rights, but as much as the south side fence.
Okay.
So
Yeah. Well, so Mayor, maybe I'll be the odd one here. I think from my perspective, I was fine with leaving Luis's fence as is and allowing RC to have his fence and allowing the walkway to exist for neighbors. But I recognize that there are some, opinions that are strongly opposed to that with regards to public safety. I don't personally share those opinions, but I would be in favor of any way to allow, I guess my order of preference would be first allow RC to have his fence, second to allow the walkway to exist, and then Luis to have his privacy and comfort and safety as much as possible. And I think that's what we sort of accomplished before, but I think giving him back some of that fence, I can definitely see where, as a father who's frequently deployed, having people constantly kind of walk through the corner of your yard, that doesn't just happen at daytime, happens at night. I would not feel comfortable with that in my own home. And so any way we can come to an amenable solution that allows him to have his comfort as well, preserve the walkway, and give RC his fence that he just wanted all along, that's where I stand.
okay.
I guess my issue here is, so I live on a corner lot and people do cut the corner. This tells me that it would be okay for me to build a fence to the front of my yard because I don't like people to cut across my lawn.
Yep.
And I disagree with that because that,
Except for in corners that you had the ordinance for traffic to be able to see, you know.
no, that there's, what do you, say that again? Sorry. What, does that
So-
apply to
so-
pedestrians?
No, we're talking about like, are you worried about like, see, the thing is on a corner lot, if traffic is impeded in their vision, it has to be set back so far for traffic to be able to see on a corner. So is that what you're talking about for your lot?
So what I'm hearing is we're making an exception because someone likes a tall fence on the side of their front yard,
That's already there.
which is illegal anywhere else in the city.
It is illegal.
But we're
everywhere.
making an exception for somebody that moved in with a fence in his front yard and is now being told that that has to change
It's
because
not his fence, it's the city's fence.
it's right next to his property. So are you suggesting that we spend the money to have him put up a fence 6 inches over?
No, all
You
I'm
wouldn't
saying
allow
is
that code.
under this code and all the rest, our codes for, like, you could not build a home and put a fence like this. That would be illegal anywhere in the city.
Yeah, the developer did it.
The developer did it.
It's just-
Or him?
It's
So-
true. But-
Well-
Before there was a house there,
Yes, it was the end of that development.
it was a field.
Right.
Right, and if I could interject, and maybe Noah could speak to this because it has to do with those, but that was a development fence. To the south, it was agricultural, and so part of usually, currently we have a buffering ordinance, and so you would have to put up fences between
Right.
the agriculture and the residential. And when you look at this, also, this isn't a corner of a right of way. It'd be it's like a walkway, and like you look at the one that's on the northwest side of that. That's a corner lot where you've got 2 right of ways, and we're concerned about the clear view. Luis's house, I don't think it's the same thing because it's you're not looking at vehicles and those dangers. So I don't think that the ordinance would necessarily stop that fence from going in now. But Noah could speak to that because he's more familiar with the zoning codes.
Yeah,
Okay, so-
well, if you want me to, I'd be happy to speak to it.
Yes.
I guess my thing is, if I don't like people to cut across my yard, I'm not allowed to build a fence to the front of my yard.
The good news is you guys are both right. Jordan is right and Corinne is right. So there is an ordinance that says that within your front yard setback, the maximum height of the fence is 3 feet. There's also another ordinance that says that when you're on a corner, there's a clear view triangle of 40 feet measured from the corner each side that would prevent, they don't want any view of pedestrians to be blocked by like fences or vegetation or anything like that. So you're both right. This is just one of those unique, weird situations. Right now, we have an ordinance that says 50 feet. That's the maximum length that you can have fences on both sides of the walkway. If you want to not even touch the fence at all, you need like 150 feet. If you want to remove some of the fence, you need like 110 feet. It's up to you what you get, what the magic number is. But those are why have an ordinance if we're not going to enforce it? So like, since it's on our property, we can't just grandfather it in. As
It's on our
on a
property.
blind eye. Yeah. So we that's not really an option. So the best option, like what everybody's talking about, if you want to change it, which you don't have to if you don't want to, but if you want to, I would recommend either do what planning commission said, is just not even have a number of feet, just say, yeah, you can do it, don't worry about it. Or if you don't even want to touch the vinyl fence, you need about 150, or if you want to go to that corner, I don't know if you see on the screen, but about right there, that you'll need about 110 feet.
How far
And-
is it to the front of his driveway? I'm just curious. I'm not saying that's the number, but
Here, let me pull it up, and I don't know.
but again, this is illegal anywhere else in the city is my fundamental issue.
Except for there's not walking paths everywhere in the city. This is
Yeah.
like one.
Very rare.
Right, but why would we? I get there's not walkways other places in the city, but at the
Yeah.
same time, we do not allow fences in front yards anywhere in the city.
This isn't somebody building a fence in their front yard. This is an existing fence that was part of the end of a development that he has become accustomed to the safety that it provides to him right next to a walkway. And now we're saying that because his neighbor also wants that sense of security, that he is now no longer allowed to have what he's become accustomed to.
I'm trying to work with him, but at the same time, I don't want anyone to feel like that we owe anyone a fence because they've had one on city property. Somehow that's
City has to be able, this is us fixing a situation that doesn't meet our own code on our property.
Once again, we have an issue that we do not go retroactive for new ordinances.
And that's
But
the
when
other
it-
part too,
you
is
do
that
every
this will
time it
actually
comes
cost us
up.
more money.
Whenever
to
something
get down
is brought to city council to have an issue resolved, at that time, we have to now meet code. This is just like an old building that maybe didn't have to be retrofitted until they wanted to make a change. Once we make a change, the new code applies.
It's the neighbor, though, who wanted the change, not Luis.
Well, it doesn't matter who wanted it. We have to make a change, so we have to right the situation.
I'm willing to go to 75 feet. That's only 25 more feet. If that helps him, but it still wouldn't go all the way to the front of the yard. But at the same time, I don't think putting a fence on one side of a front yard adds any level of safety for the neighbor over there.
I agree.
It does to him. And I'm going to go to a principle here of the people directly impacted by this, to me, should take precedence. These are the landowners that are right next to this property. And so I think that one of our greatest things is and obligations is to try to help the people who are the actual landowners, not even just the surrounding areas. They would be second preference to me. So if it's the people who butt against this is their property line. And we've gone to great lengths in the city to suggest that people should have the freedom to do what they want with their land. This
So
is
let me,
Different than the
land
people
and
that
this
are
is
butt up
Luis.
against an apartment complex.
This ends up
Listen to
costing
them
the city
first.
more money.
Yeah.
This
It would
ends up
cost-
costing the city more money to tear down and replace with the shorter fence. Just
Yeah.
another thought there as
Costs
well.
thousands of dollars to do that.
so
So
if
it
I
would
can summarize what you're saying, the people directly adjacent to a property, their opinion should
No.
matter more
The people
than
that-
the
whose
city as a whole.
No, the people whose property it is, and that's RC's property, and it's Luis's property. I mean, truly, that's Luis's property, right? The fence is his. That's
It's
his.
not. He didn't put it in. He doesn't own it. It's not his property.
Well, then
Okay, I call the question.
This-
We're obviously going round and round.
here. So I'm fine to.
If this were
I-
really, okay, if this was really about who lives closest, why
No,
didn't we just
it's
sell
who's
it?
directly impacted by it.
Okay, so why didn't we just sell it? And then if we're gonna disregard the people who use the walkway, then just sell it and the people can have their fence.
After having discussed it with our attorney as well as Noah and the landowners, this was the thing that pleased the most people.
I'm willing to go to 75 feet if that helps us get this. I do that requires less money from the city it's less fence to tear down. We don't have to put up any 3-foot barrier because it's pulls it back to the driveway, which is really the yard. And so does 75 feet, would you guys be amenable to that?
Well, I voted with Jordan and Dave last time, and I'm the one pretty much saying, let's reconsider this. So I mean, if that's what gets us there, but I would like to call a question and see where people are at.
There's no question.
There's
we're
no
not in a
question. It's
voting
just a
meeting.
discussion.
Sorry, you are correct.
Okay, so I would say give him from the beginning of his property, which is the corner of the grass there, yes, right there, to the back fence, the end of his property at the back, and allow RC to do his full fence. If that takes it to 110, I think that is a good compromise for everyone.
And
You
see,
know,
I'd
we've
say
seen
pull
this-
it back to the front of the driveway because that's really where most properties would end. And I understand that not all houses are the same size, so that would give you that extra that extra leeway to make this more generic for the city. And I think 75 feet is still better than 110, obviously. But I think 75 still gives him all the way to the front of the driveway.
I would just note that we've been through similar situations before where we made a ruling, then the citizens come back and say, absolutely not. And then the other group of citizens come back and say, no way, what you just gave them wasn't right. At some point, we have to stand on a ruling.
Yeah, I'm standing on reconsideration.
For my opinion, it was the fact that Luis really didn't have the opportunity to speak, despite the fact that he tried.
He's not here again.
That's not necessarily his fault because he contacted this directly.
Our coaches and were unable to get out of prepping their for a bowl.
He was in the previous council meeting and was not allowed to speak personally.
Let me take us then into kind of a decision realm, although we really can't act on it. I'd just like to see, Lisa, would you reconsider this?
Can anyone hear me?
Yes, is that Luis?
Yeah, this is Luis. I'm sorry, hi. Hello, everyone. Thank you for giving me the chance to speak. Well, my name is Luis Agin. I lived in this house for over 4 years now. And like last meeting that I had with some of the members of the city council, I brought a couple points that, I was really concerned about, and which those things is like, as the city is growing, crime is coming. Sadly, crime is coming with that, and there's been a lot of break-ins, especially in my actual block. And the thing that I brought into the city council members was, look, I feel a little bit more safe because I don't know if you guys seen to the actual the front of my house, my front yard, my fence, my front fence is a see-through fence, which means it's like it has gaps on them. It's like a 4-inch to 5-inch gaps between it. So people just walking through that pathway either at nighttime or daytime, for me it's concerning because I usually have my kids playing in the front yard, and I do. I mean, it gives me some kind of like, like peace of mind, saying that kind of I have my kids some sort of way safe. So the thing is like, and I'm scared for my family because when I say that is because I'm always deploying. Every 16 months or 18 months I'm deploying. So for 6 months at a time. And I really have a piece of my head, leaving my family behind, and, the city council actually trying to take away the fence. It's gonna make me more worried about my family. The only thing that last conversation that I had with the city council was, I want you, all of you, put yourself in my position. Think that you guys live there. I understand that you guys say that the fence doesn't belong to me. I understand. I didn't build the house. I didn't got the house. I'm the third owner of this home. But that fence gave me some type of security. And you guys leaving the fence all the way to the end of my property, which is my front yard, you will be removing 35 feet. So the only thing that I had a conversation with the mayor, with Noah, with a few members of the city council was, if you're taking 35 feet away, I think that will be good for the neighborhood because they get to keep the walkway. I get some of the fence, obviously, from the front of my front yard. My neighbor gets his fence, his privacy, his security, because we all need our privacy. Some people do like privacy, some other people don't. So me having a 3-foot fence in my front yard is about safety for me and my kids when I'm not home or not when I'm in a different country. And not just only that, but I believe that that is gonna create problems eventually in the future. And what me saying that is like, either somebody's gonna, break the fence or something happens, or either they get hurt in my side of my yard, and then I will have that liability or something like that. You don't know what's gonna happen years from now. So the only thing I just want you guys just to think about, put yourself in my position. I only have little kids. I know they're gonna grow eventually, right? But my youngest is only 10 months, and me just being gone away from home for a period of times, I mean, it gives you some peace of mind saying, at least they didn't remove this fence, and I feel a little bit more secure. And that's the only thing that I wanted. I never was involved in either I wanted the pathway or wanted to get it removed. I didn't want none of that. I didn't even know what was going on to the actual second meeting that you guys decided, that you guys were gonna remove it or something like that. So for me, it was just, I just felt bad because, I mean, when I was introduced, because I didn't get a chance to speak, I was introduced like I was somebody just, oh, don't remove the fence, don't touch anything. I wasn't like that. I was more like concerned about my family, what was gonna happen to them. And believe it or not, like I said, like the community is growing, and sadly, it's coming a lot of break-ins around Syracuse. I mean, you can see on the site, you can see in reports, police reports, and for me, that pathway, I mean, it's just me saying, that will be an easy exit point for anybody, either to come in from one neighborhood to the other. Just me. But like I said, I never want to be, I was never part of it. For me, the pathway can stay or can be gone, doesn't matter. But the only thing I just want that fence for you guys to accept, and hopefully accept and leave the fence. So, my family can I can have some peace, and my wife can have some peace in our minds.
Luis, thank you for your comments. RC, can I recognize you?
I don't think, oh, is RC here?
Yeah, sorry. I'm kind of in middle of football. I don't know if you guys can see, but whatever makes Luis, like I said, and I've told the council members, I tried calling every one of you guys, and I hate that Luis indirectly has been involved, and I really want to make sure that he feels safe. I mean, that's what good neighbors do, and that's what I'm here for. So if you guys have problems with the walk path itself as the ordinance, I mean, get rid of the thing. I mean, it makes total sense. I don't understand. I don't think you guys should bicker. The solution for everybody would just get rid of the thing. So that's my 2 cents. So I'm going to go back to coaching these little squirts, make sure they're hitting hard, right?
Thank you. Thank you,
RC.
Thanks, guys.
Corinne?
Well, my main thoughts are Luis pretty much summed it up pretty well. It's just the fact that we know that it's very desired by the community there and highly desired. And so barring getting rid of accessing it, this to me sounds like the best way now that Luis has had his ability to give his opinion on it. And I appreciate him reaching out because, this is an indirect result of RC trying to get his fence.
Council, the purpose of tonight's discussion is to lead to whether or not we reconsider. Can I just, Lisa, reconsider or not reconsider?
Reconsider.
Seth, reconsider or not reconsider?
Yeah, reconsider.
Corinne, reconsider or not consider?
Reconsider.
Okay, Seth or Jordan?
I'm willing to reconsider, but again, I'm not going to go all the way to 110 feet. I just don't like that. I'd be willing to reconsider moving it to 75, and that still gets him all the way to the front of his driveway. That's more than 99.9% of the citizens in Syracuse get. But if that gives them a level of security, I think 75 feet is reasonable.
We will have time, if we reconsider this, we'll have time for discussion. Dave?
Yep. I think we've ruled on this 3 times now, so I don't see why we're going to do it again.
All right. Okay. Cassie, would you separate the minutes for our last business meeting that we can reconsider this item in that minute?
Didn't we just approve those?
Yep, we did. So
Was
we
that
can't
on the
really
25th of
reconsider.
August? Yeah, if we've already approved the minutes for him, then it needs to be like a new agenda item.
New agenda item, okay. Well, the
It's
25th.
a zoning code, so it'll need to go to the planning commission.
Okay, all right. All right, I'll reconsider. Let's send it to the planning commission.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay.
you.
Noah, we're ready for the Noah show?
Da, 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 da.
Yeah, some theme music, please.
I think the first one's actually mine.
Yeah, it actually is Paul's.
Oh, in that case,
Take it
dun,
away,
dun, dun.
Yep. Wah, wah. Okay.
Paul is just opening for Noah tonight.
That's right. I'm gonna loosen up the crowd here. All right.
The lawyer? Does that really work?
No, it doesn't. Just as well as the engineer, I think.
Hey.
Hey.
So
I'm just kidding.
true.
Oh. All right. So this is, just briefly, hopefully you read the memo. This is a proposed payback agreement for the field subdivision. With some development, they do a lot of infrastructure that kind of makes, often there's a parcel that's separated from the other infrastructure in the city, and there are other parcels that will be able to benefit from the very expensive infrastructure that they put in for their development. And so payback agreement is something that our code contemplates, and it is essentially recorded against the benefited properties. And for 10 years, if they develop those properties, then they are required to pay some money to the city, which we pass on to the original developer so they can recoup some of those costs. The city doesn't, we're not responsible for these costs. So by approving this, it's not like we're saying the city's going to pay it back. It's just we pass it along through to the developer. So if you have any questions about that, let me know. We didn't have the property descriptions in this draft, or sorry, in today's packet, but I just received those today. So if this goes forward to a decision, I'll have that in the final resolution.
Will you have that by the next meeting?
Yes, yeah, I've got it. It's already in the draft now. I didn't upload it for tonight. So yeah, it's ready to go.
Okay, all right. Okay, and you'll make sure that gets on the agenda?
Well, as long as the council wants to talk about it.
Yep. Want to talk about it, council?
I think it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay, Noah.
All right. Appreciate you guys. I know that there are a lot of pages in this packet, so we'll try to be as pain-free as possible. So recently, as you know, we've been discussing multifamily housing, and a common concern about multifamily housing is crime. And so there was a great idea brought up last time and made it as part of the condition of approval that we create a crime-free program and also look into CPTED, which is crime prevention through environmental design. So the crime-free program would be administered through the police department. Garrett was awesome and really put together the packet item for this, and so hopefully you've had a chance to read up on it. But the meat of the crime-free program is a lease addendum that each renter is required to sign, that basically says, usually, they can be tailored to each community, but basically has a list of things that if you do, you're out, any crime, and it really makes the management of the apartments more strict in if there are tenants that are committing crimes, that they will be evicted immediately. And then the second half of that is training for the police goes, and then they work with the development management to make sure that those lease addendums are being implemented, and there's some other things with the management of the property. Now, CPTED is a separate thing that is basically, it has more to do with the design of the property. and also the ongoing maintenance of the property. But there's some principles. Natural surveillance, if you can imagine, keeping honest people honest sometimes involves just making sure they know they're being watched. And so that basically is like strategically locating doorways and windows and landscaping to prevent dark corners and lights in the right places, so that there's not by accident. Sometimes you don't always think out, but we've been talking a lot about this with our walkways. We don't want to create these dark areas that crime could happen. So the CPTED would be a certification that me and Royce would get, and then we would make sure that any of the projects that go through site plan would be reviewed for those principles, and so there'd be some potential changes to their design when they go through site plan. And then there's an ongoing annual review, and so we would partner with the police department, and their officers would go out and make sure that there aren't things that are happening with the crime on the property, and if there's any new things that maybe they need to change as far as the deadbolts or the design or some landscaping that might overgrow or something over time. So there's kind of an ongoing component to that too. So I think the purpose of this was just kind of more informational. I don't think this is even going to go to any voting, but so there's your spiel. I think I probably took up almost all the 10 minutes, but Garrett, or Chief, if you have anything to add, you're welcome to, and council, if you have any questions for me, I can try to answer them best I could.
Are we going to I noticed that in one place in this document there was some redundancy. It was just, it looks like a typo type of thing. But yeah, I guess if it doesn't get cleared up in the next packet, then we can address it then. What would you like to do?
A typo in the packet?
I thought
It's on page 6 of this form. It just repeats the civil versus criminal twice.
Oh.
It's not a big deal.
We'll just note it. I don't think there will be even another agenda item unless you guys want to talk more about it.
Okay.
Garrett, do you have any comment?
I don't, Mayor. I think this will be a good program for us, but unless the council has specifics for me, they've seen it, and I'll just answer questions if they're interested.
I guess, can I just say a couple of things? So first of all, I think this is a great program. As I read through it, it looks like it basically is just a zero tolerance policy for any type of criminal activity. I do want to extend this to any storage zones we have as well. So it sounds like the way we would move forward on this is we would need to add this as a condition into, would we actually put this in our zoning ordinances for these, that they would need to provide this? And secondly, I also noticed that we would need to approve funding for what looked like some training for our planning group.
Yeah.
And also looking at adding in funding to have the police go from a part-time to a full-time position. Is that correct? Did I miss anything as far as the path forward on this?
And regarding that, Jordan, my concern is just that we just entered a new budget year. I would hate to have to wait till another budget year and be without these services. So we got to figure out a way to get it into this budget year, but that's money we didn't plan for.
That's kind of where I was going with this.
Okay, but nothing's built, so why do we need it now?
Council, I would agree kind of with what Corinne was just saying. The program itself at this standpoint is almost at the build level. So NOAA's portion is really the most important part. That would be the crime prevention through environmental design, get the structures built in such a manner that we, on the front end, we're trying to control these through proven methods. And then as they actually come online, we can get the management through the training. So in all honesty, I mean, the PD one, I don't think you're going to see ours probably until the end of we would probably make it not this budget year, but the year after that would be when we would be looking for anything that may have an increase on ours. I just wanted you to know that we were looking ahead and that these could be some potential impacts on budget going forward. But outside of NOAA's, none of it's immediate right now for us.
But that
Chief?
part would be immediate.
Quick question concerning Jordan's comments about storage units. Do you feel like this is needed for storage units?
There is a kind of an offshoot of this program for it that they just call crime-free storage units. It's run by the same thing. Principles are very much the same. Again, I think this is just one of those proactive things that the council can be part of to say, hey, this was a concern people were bringing up, and this is the method that we're trying to do to control that concern as best we can.
And Chief, do you think so? If we did extend it to storage units, would the same cost be kind of encapsulated with that as well? It sounds like it's pretty much the same, but just a slightly variant set of recommendations or such training. So it sounds like it's probably pretty translatable.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to see any increase in the training cost to it. You could, depending on the number of
storage sheds
properties that you have involved in it, you could see what I would say would just be a slight increase in like office supply stuff to run the program, handouts, binders, signs, those kind of things, but it's not going to increase the training.
Okay, Chief, but back to that question though, as far as I understood from the previous storage unit debate we had, that they had looked into calls to the storage units and there had been like 3 times in the last 5 years. Is that about accurate?
I don't remember the numbers, but I know we gave them the information. So whatever they cited with that, I'm going to say was accurate since we gave it to them.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yep.
Council, are we good? You seem to be all in agreement with this addition to particularly mixed use. You see any reason why we shouldn't move forward?
I like it. Thank you, Chief.
Okay.
So would we just be having this go to the planning commission, make this part of the ordinance, that this has to be part of any development? I guess that's what I'm still not clear on.
Sure.
So council, I don't know the answer to that one. It may legitimately be one Paul has to answer to say whether or not you can have a legal requirement putting this on someone. What I would say is that there have been other cities that do this, and they provide perhaps an incentive for the apartment communities to do it. So, just some of them, it would be like maybe there's some kind of rebate on their taxes that they get every year for being in good standing with the program.
Yeah, the way that it works, Garrett, is so it's the Good Landlord Program, and in the code, you're allowed to charge a disproportionate rental fee. So these are in cities that charge business license fee for rental units, which we don't do currently. So they first of all, they have a fee for rental units, and then they have to commission a study. The study looks at whether there are actually more calls for service for public safety, fire and police at apartments over like a single family residence. If they find that, then you can justify the fee, and then you can reward good landlord participants by reducing that disproportionate fee as long as they participate in the program. And if they fail to participate or refuse to participate, then you just charge them that higher fee. So that's kind of how that works, where it's mandatory. That's in the state code, and it's laid out pretty clearly. But that's the way you make it mandatory.
Well, that sounds all that's far down the road, since we don't have the ability to kind of analyze really what the impact would be at this point.
It seems like the approach that was taken in our last couple of meetings is valid, and that is that before we made approvals, we asked if they would voluntarily, and this is Seth made the request, would you voluntarily participate in this? And that commitment, I think, influenced the vote. So I think that's fair, is it not? That's not a requirement. It's asking them to.
Yeah. So Yeah, I think with incoming future developments, yeah, I think that's something that we can put into the development agreements. The question would be, what can we apply this to existing multifamily housing and make it mandatory? And that you could do, but it would take a while because you'd have to establish the fee and do the study, and it would probably be a 6-month to 1-year process to get to that if you want to get there for everything in the city. So that's, yeah, I think that if they agree to it and it's part of the development agreement, then yeah, we can.
Yeah, I think if we ask and they agree, then it's the easiest route.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep, I like it.
Okay, and I think I've not heard anything that I didn't hear before 2 weeks ago. So I think we need to proceed with this and just bring it back to us, Paul and Noah, when you need something from the council.
Mayor, do we need to, I mean, I guess the piece is we are going to still have to consider the funds for training for NOAA.
CED, yeah.
Well,
we already have.
That's just because I'm such a frugal spender and so wise with our taxpayer dollars. I usually have some overage in my budget that could probably absorb the cost to get certified.
Woohoo.
So
it's also an online training, so you don't have to have, house or a hotel and per diem and travel and all that associated.
Nice.
I may need to work with Steve to kind of reposition some things within my budget. But usually there's at least 1,000 or so that I think last year there was more than that, but.
Well, let me know. You can take it out of my pay. I like it. I'm willing.
Okay,
Thanks, Noah.
Noah, bring this back to us when you need our help again.
Okay.
Okay. Let's move to item 3.
All right, item 3, mixed use on the Dahl property. Last time it was tabled for more discussion. Remember, there was maybe a little bit of doubt introduced and some concern about the office component, about whether or not it's feasible and the timing and when it gets built, and does the multifamily get built and then the office gets built, and then if that's delayed, how long, and doesn't the ordinance require that the office is built up front? And so we were exploring all that. I think there was some confusion. Hopefully we can answer some of those questions. The developer should be here on the line, Jerry Preston. In the meantime, I've been doing some research about the office market and the impacts, and then also just the value of a large office like building like this for our city. So we, as we all know, that the office component is way more than any of the others. But that all, and so that provides a huge benefit, but also because of the current office market is a pretty big risk for the developer. So if we really want this, I think the city needs to have this is my recommendation opinion, but is that we should look at this as a partnership to bring to fruition this type of facility of this scale during a time where market conditions are a little tough. And so we've created the CDA and we have that on a separate agenda item. But really what we were looking at is not necessarily a change in his proposed plan, but maybe a change, a potential amendment to the way the development agreement is worded. And that's where you guys will decide what you think is appropriate in connection. I've spoken with the developer. He's, he keeps assuring me he has no plans to not do the office. It's just there's a certain amount of risk involved with bringing it right now with lending and the office market. But I think is what our discussion should focus around is really what should the development agreement say? What are we holding him to as far as, as there, right now it says that, maybe I'll just pull it up, but he has to, there's a timeline for which he has to start the office in relationship to the final occupancy of the last building. So it is still tied. And then there's also another tool is the deed restriction on the property. So, and then there's also the surety bond, which of course, it's net, I don't think we'll be able to get a surety bond in the amount that we could build it if he were to back out. But is what the surety bond does is really gives a commitment and a little bit more than just a verbal commitment that he will be doing it, because if he doesn't do it, then he defaults on that will have some financial ramifications. Might not be enough to actually for us to build the building, but it does give us some assurances. So hopefully I didn't just talk around in circles, and that was useful to kind of frame the conversation. But let me pull up the development agreement here of what the draft development agreement says. Private drive. There you go. So let's talk of a surety and transfer of commercial component. So he can sell it, and then if he doesn't do it, so it says guarantees that within 6 months of the approval of occupancy of the final residential building, the developer will file for a building permit on the commercial building, and then that building has to be constructed with 1 year. You can't just get a building permit and just sit on it. So that's where you guys have to decide, is that enough? Or are there other things that we want to do to make sure that this is feasible for him and for us? Because one of the other risks, the purpose of the mixed use ordinance has always been to essentially squeeze out as much commercial out of these sites, and each site is different. And some sites will have more juice that squeezes out when you squeeze it to get a little bit of commercial, where maybe the market wants to just build residential. And obviously we're seeing that, but the ordinance has been, it squoze 16,000 out of one and 45 out of another, 4,500 out of another one. And this one is a different site, and it's more feasible for this commercial because it's closer to the town center, but it's also maybe squeezing out so much that, I think it would be foolish for us to really push a building that would be vacant forever. So we also want to be careful of being realistic of what we expect to be built and realistic of what we expect to be feasible. So there's my spill. This is the ordinance. I'll turn it back over to you guys. Like I said, the developer is here to answer questions, and as you debate and have discussions, feel free to ask me questions.
Seth, will you lead us out on this?
Sure. Yeah. So I like the development. I had some concerns before, and I think we can get through those. After reading our economic development draft plan, as well as some of the highlights that you brought up, Noah, there's obviously concern around the fact that the entire county in a it's kind of weird the way it's written, but in 4 or 5 quarters yielded or absorbed 60,000 square feet of office space. And so obviously, and then the development plan, or the economic development plan, further kind of identifies we're against a lot of hurdles that are maybe not inherent in some other areas along the I-15 corridor, Layton and by the base and stuff like that. So all that kind of gives me a little bit of pause on putting or not having some protections in place to ensure that the commercial component gets built. And so I think there was some talks about, with the developer potentially having a timeline to utilize the CDA funds and being able to be flexible with the space that they would basically build the entire thing with a reasonable expectation that it all gets leasable commercial space. And then at some point we allow them to pivot a little bit about that. Is there still thoughts towards that? Is that something that we are still able to consider with the developer? Because obviously the number one goal is to get all that commercial space, but it's not much of a goal if it's not leased.
David?
Well, I'm not worried about it being leased as much because I've been watching for years. The EDC Utah puts out bulletins and we've responded to them, and Noah and I have talked about a couple of them, or I've, pointed out that I noticed too that we're a good fit for some. So there's always people looking to come in. And I think the only reason we haven't had more near Hill Air Force Base is lack of availability. A lot of those come out and say that if there was something that, that their preference is for something that's ready to move in. And there just hasn't been anything near Hill. So I think that building this is the right move. I think that it will fill. We have an appealing location for that. So, and we also have the CDA that can help with incentive if we need to get it started or kick it off. So we've done that in other places and it worked very well. So I think that we want to do this with the building as
And
part
don't get
of
me wrong, I do as well, Dave. I do fully.
Corinne?
You're muted, Corinne.
Thank you, David. All right, a couple questions I have about the UDOT access, just the staff comments that were in the packet. Just want a reassurance that that happens first, and also the retail building elevations were not included still in the plan yet. So will those be available before this comes to a vote? And then there was a question about the type of fence along the back, and I don't think that was, we really hammered on the other ones to put in a really, adequate fence. Can that possibly be looked at too, rather than just a vinyl? Anyway, it's not anything to die on, that's for sure, but it's just a concern. With the true mixed use, with having a pivot point at some point in the future, if an office building isn't totally full, well, if you have the first 2 floors doing pretty good and the third is empty, it goes back to that idea of true mixed use with being vertical, and I wouldn't have a problem with that.
Thank you, Corinne. Lisa?
All the concerns that we had last time when we were voting to table it until those were addressed, we've discussed and they've been addressed. And just as both Seth and Corinne have brought up, those were some of my concerns with we would never want to set our anybody up for failure. So I think it's a great option to do, just as we were discussing, maybe leaving the option open that after a certain amount of time and effort trying to fill the space, if we still are struggling with it, that we can alter some of the residential connected to the commercial. Anyway, I think it's a great plan, and I would like to see if we do address anything about the fence in the back, because I know that we've talked about the 85 feet, meaning that it's no longer adjacent, because that gives you a full street value of acreage or of square footage. But that's something I'd like to just maybe see if there's any thoughts about that. And that's all I have.
Okay. Jordan?
Yeah, so as I said, this is my favorite of all the ones we've seen. I mean, it's got a good use. It has a very community feel to it as I look through it. So first of all, nice work on putting this together. As far as the risk involved in the commercial, I mean, we had a office space in City Hall that we didn't even really advertise via any agency, and within 2 months it was full.
Great.
Maybe we just got lucky, but I think that's actually a favorable sign of the condition of, I think we're going to see a lot more satellite offices, and this thing fits that bill.
Yeah.
If it has good internet access, I know that's something we'll talk about later. If it has high-speed internet and good access and good parking, I think this will be a huge success, and I think it'll kind of really be a huge boon to the community. I do have the same concerns with, I want to make sure that Walker Estates is taken care of. So we need to make sure we are working through the buffering. Right now, we still have dumpsters that are adjacent to backyards that need to be addressed. We need to make sure that the buffer zones are adequately bermed and populated with vegetation. I think there was a couple of other items that we just need to make sure the landscaping meets the ordinance. But by and large, this is a phenomenal concept. I'm pretty happy with how this is turning out. And if we can just get these things addressed, the one thing, I know this will all take place in the site plan, but the other ones that we've gone through, they were able to get a lot of this in advance. If we can get it in, I think it would be great. Let's just try and check these boxes so we don't have any reason to have pause on going forward. But yeah, I think if we can get the items that we've identified addressed and get the clarification on the boundary zone, I think this will be a hugely successful development with the good access that you've got. The transportation is already set up to manage this. I think this will be a huge success. So I would love to see this move forward in the next meeting.
Jerry, are you there?
I am, Mayor. Thank you. And council members, I appreciate your time and efforts and time spent with you. Again, I just briefly want to go back to the history of where we're at. I know that Jordan and Dave have been on board, and Corinne, for a lot of years. We've been working on with this for over 2.5 years. And I think the product of what we have and what I presented isn't necessarily what was designed in the mixed use ordinance, because at the time we didn't have a mixed use ordinance when we talked about this. But I think what we've done by providing the more commercial was based upon all the conversations we had as we went into this and talked about what the city really wanted to see here. So if I can assure the council members anything, if there's anything on here, I really want it to be the way it is, and I want it to be successful. There is no advantage to us. We are sticking our necks out a long ways by providing this much commercial, but I'm with Dave. I think we can lease it. I think there is some issues and concerns of what ifs. What is going to happen to the market if it doesn't? And that's why we've come up with a little bit of ideas saying, based upon your comfortability of when is there a time period that, so the building will make sure it gets built, that maybe we look at some options of some other options to be able to build it by including some residential above it type of thing, if the businesses don't come and we aren't able to get it. The one challenges we are facing today is that right now, anyone to lend on any commercial buildings, I mean, you basically have to be 80% leased with good guaranteed leases and a lot of backbone behind them before we can even get a loan to build it, because of where we are with COVID right now. But by the time this is built and the way the development agreements are there, I believe we can get it up. As soon as it's approved, we'll start marketing. I've talked to several commercial real estate agents that are excited about it, but they also tell me today, for the spec market, for you to build it, they wouldn't recommend it, but that they thought that they could find us some tenants for it that could give us some leases for some pre-built, pre-leased options to build it. So we're excited about it, but I just want to assure the council, if this goes, we build the residential component here and we don't complete this office building, I've gained nothing on this project. I mean, we will be tied up and guaranteed on this commercial side of things until that's actually built. So, you know, we've got the surety bond there in place that we're talking about doing. Plus, you have to remember, we have the ground that it's under that's entitled and will be locked into commercial that's also tied up there. So what we really want to look at this as being a partnership with the city to say, you know, when we build it, it'll come. And we're pretty optimistic that that'll happen, but we feel like we need to work with the city to be able to help us accomplish that. That's why I'm very grateful for the city, you know, talking about the CDC money that maybe we can throw in as incentive to leasers to come on board and come down here. So I'm positive about it.
I'd just like to add to that, because, you know, for years I went to the EDC Utah meetings and talked to some of the things that they would do with their business get-togethers. I haven't in the last little while, but the reason I bring that up is that a lot of times when you can say, we have an approved plan and this building is about to go up and you can build to suit, and there's no waiting for city council to approve that there's a spot or, you know, there's a building available or permitting or zoning. When you can say all that's done, that's really appealing to some of these businesses that are trying to decide where to go. And we haven't had that in the past. This would give us that. And the city can be a great asset to go out and just say, you know, when we hear about these projects or we hear about people looking, we can say, hey, we have one on the books that's ready to come out of the ground. If you're willing to wait a few, you know, whatever the few months or whatever, you know, we could work with you.
Yeah,
I think that's
Dave's
something
right.
we haven't had.
Yeah, I'll echo that. Dave's definitely right. Even though it wouldn't be a spec building, just having it what we'd call shovel ready, you know, and you'd have the pretty pictures and the renderings and the plans, and we have those good relationships with the state, and as those RFIs come out, we can respond to them, and then like Jerry said, he's got his broker that could be marketing it too.
Yeah, I mean, as I look around the city, I don't see vacant office space. I see there's a few other vacancies, but not office space.
Yeah.
Council, if you're good with it, may I put this on the agenda for our business meeting in October? Well, I don't want to limit discussion, but with discussion, and then a motion to vote.
Sure.
Yes, we just want to make sure the staff comments are taken care of. Thank you.
All right. Staff
Can I
comment?
comment on that real quick, Corinne? The architect is working on all of those changes, UDOT issues. We had a meeting with UDOT today that Noah's involved with. We are working to mitigate our landscaping along the perimeter. That's being updated. I've also received an email from members of the Walker Estates that we'll get with and try to help work through mitigation for them at the same time.
And about the retail building elevations, is that on its way too?
Yeah, the 2-story one that we missed and didn't get included out there is being drawn as we speak.
Good, thank you.
Thank you, Council. Let's move to item 4, Noah.
Close your eyes if you haven't taken your Dramamine yet. Oh, baby.
Jordan,
557.
Yeah. Jordan, where's the sunset?
That's Jensen Pond.
Is it?
I got this from a guy on Facebook. He said I could use this for, this is just from the other side of Jensen Pond.
Okay. Proposed amendment to the zoning map, R1 to R3. This is out on 3000 West near Shoreline. It's known as the Toucan. Keith Russell owns this property. This actually was originally going to be part of the Shoreline development, but they didn't include it in their environmental evaluations, and so it had to be removed. There's not a lot you can do with this property, but one interesting thing is that if you look at the Shoreline master plan, there's an important east-west road that is currently just stubbed right here. And so it is important for this development to have this road connected through here. And so that's, he plans on just building that road and then subdividing it to some lots. The R3 lot minimum lot size is 8,000 square feet. The neighbors came to Planning Commission. They're not excited about 8,000 square feet. So there was some conversation about that, and a lot of the conversation was also around potential impacts to the neighbors in future agriculture buildings. So we have an ordinance that says that you can't put a pig pen or whatever, animal pens closer than, I think it's 150 feet to a road. And so that will impact these surrounding landowners' ability to put pens and things if they wanted to in the future. Any existing ones could stay, but according to that ordinance, it says that they'd have to be spaced away from those property boundaries. And so planning commission was really worried about that impact to them. And so they unanimously recommend approval with the recommendation that we look at that ordinance and, you know, maybe loosen up those requirements for agricultural type buildings. But yeah, you can see the current zoning here. The general plan is medium density. So R3 is within one of the options of medium density. If you were to do less than a R3, you'd have to actually change the general plan to a low density, because R3 is not an option on the low density designation. I included Shoreline's master plan here just so you could get an idea of the connection there. So that's where it currently stubs. And Shoreline does have some, like 7,000, 6,000, 5,000, kind of in the same neighborhood, but notice the ones that are right next to these properties, they're 12,000. That's kind of a R1 density. These would be 8,000. So that's providing a little consternation to the neighbors. But I wouldn't call it necessarily out of the realm because of these. These are all this orange color. But this
What is the max
orange,
size of an R3?
there is no maximum. You can. There's always, surprisingly,
Always about the minimum.
it's always
Everybody
about
loves
the
something.
minimum. But yeah, they could put a lot bigger in an R3.
R3 is 4 to an acre, right, Noah?
What was that?
R3 is 4 to an acre, correct? At least that's what was in the packet.
4 units max.
Yeah.
So we have actually 2 controls on density. We have maximum number of units per acre, and then we also have a minimum lot size. But if you take 8,000 divided by 43,560, 0.18 of an acre. So it's actually a little bit less than a quarter acre.
Okay.
0.18 is a lot less than a quarter of an acre.
Yeah.
0.18?
If I did my math right, I think I did.
Try that again.
Yeah, that's about right.
Well, there's 0.25 is.
Yeah. So look, 43,560 times 0.25, that's 10,000. So 8,000's 0.18, a little bit smaller.
Okay, so this is comparable.
I think
to
it's
the
wise
one.
not to do public math in public, though. I think
Yeah.
That's my rule.
you have warned me.
Always wrong.
But you say it's comparable to the orange ones, is that correct?
They'll be probably a little bit bigger than these orange ones because remember the Shoreline.
Yeah.
These are no bigger than 7,000.
Yeah.
Right.
So getting right up close to it, how close to
Actually-
this property is an 8,000 square foot or lower home?
They're at least
Actually, sorry, I misspoke. That orange is 7,000 to 12,000, so they would be kind of comparable. There's lots of R3 developments. Like if you look at, I think Monterey Estates. Here, sorry if I'm getting on a tangent. Close your eyes for this. Apologize for the zooming. Here's an R3 development right here. See, R3. So this is what an R3 development looks like, assuming street view is. Most people don't know the difference between R3 and R2.
So that's about what we're looking at.
Yeah, so if you can imagine a street stubbing into that master plan community with, we don't know exactly how many homes on each side, but it's
Actually helpful to see the visual.
yeah, and then behind those homes you'd have those larger lots, like with the Burgesses and the Epps and things like that. They're doing some farming things, so we do want to make sure that they can keep doing what they're doing, and that's why Planning Commission recommends that we amend the animal ordinance. But that would be a separate item.
getting rid of like pig farms, or what exactly are we looking at to amend that?
Well, they can have those agricultural uses on the fence line if it's butting up to an R3.
Yeah. Did I put the actual language in there? Yeah. So,
but they're
Yeah,
already
the concern is that they can keep their structures that they already have. The concern was, well, if I want to build a new chicken coop, I wouldn't be able to build one, you know, in this part of my lot or things. So the planning commission was really just saying, like, can we make it so they can keep using their land as they've been using it as farmland and not have these restrictions apply to the existing farm uses? And
No,
that's
wait,
something we could definitely write into the code.
A chicken coop wouldn't have this issue because you can have chicken coops in an R2 zone.
Yeah.
Right, but you can't have it within. So like that section you guys highlighted.
Property.
It's coops. You can't have it within 50 feet of a dwelling or within 150 feet of a public street.
So you're saying with
with
me on a corner, I could never have a chicken coop?
no, you can. The biggest difference is in an R1 or a A1, they might have 50 chickens, and a coop that smells a lot differently than somebody in maybe a normal neighborhood that has 6 chickens.
Kind of more of a buyer beware, you know that you're butted up against agricultural land and they were here first.
Yeah.
So we're not talking about restricting them, we're talking about protecting them.
I'm good with that.
protecting the existing.
So
Yeah, we could easily amend this and just like,
Yeah.
planning commission look at it and maybe this number of feet gets changed, or I don't know, maybe they delete the whole thing. I don't know. We can see.
Or maybe A1 is able to use their land as they want, you know.
Yeah,
We're
you
pretty
just-
close to that.
Unlimited number of pigs. Just
The
kidding.
problem
Ooh,
is
that would be lovely.
the people in the R3 will object and say that we have rights that are protected in the R3 zone.
Well, not if we have it in play before it's built.
Okay, so let's get back to the main issue. And I think that what I'd like to have considered is that when we went through the shoreline development and all of the issues surrounding that, the developer made some huge concessions to put R1 size lots around this outside border. And now we're talking about allowing somebody to be on the other side of that border and go back to R3. I'm just wondering if it isn't more consistent to say, why can't you take that small parcel and divide it into R1 lots instead of R3 lots?
I think the answer is the lot yield in relationship to the cost of building that road. And maybe, I don't know, is Keith Russell here? Maybe he can answer, maybe that's appropriate for him to answer why he's really wanting the R3.
But my point is that the shoreline group said we will, to try and appease all of the farmers in this area, we will put the high or the lower density lots up abutted to the farms. And now we're saying, now that we're going to invade that side of those lower density lots, we're going to go back to the higher density right between farms.
It's a different application. You have to consider them separately.
Okay, but I think that the consistency was.
Well, they did it with, the only thing is they sat down with the residents on their own. This was not a council decision to do that. They did.
Council decision whether this is appropriate or not.
True, but you can't weigh that into the previous decision because they went to the residents on their own. The developer did.
But we can still weigh on in whether it's appropriate or not.
I'm just saying, as far as your reference to shoreline, this is a separate deal. It's on its own.
If they build,
Then we are literally looking at a shoreline map right now.
Yeah, it's you guys are looking at a rezone, whether or not it's appropriate in the context. And to the
That's all I'm saying.
You're gonna have shoreline context, and to the north and south you have Epps and Booth context.
Yep.
So yeah, it's up to you guys. What if you are concerned about that size of lot, then you can certainly say no.
Those houses down Doral are really nice. I don't know why this is,
One thing.
it's scary to have any change, I'm sure.
were we able to hear why, what the cost issue was? Did you say someone was here that we could hear from? Somebody's in Zoom.
Well, if the
Oh,
mural,
what the,
well, I
the
don't even know if
proposal?
it's
The
here.
develop-
I hope that the applicant's here, but sometimes they're not. But it's, you know, if you look at a scale, on one side you have costs and one side you have profits, and it's not our job to worry about their profits, but if we're trying to answer why certain things happen the way they do, is roads are $1 million a mile, and we require a pretty wide right of way compared to some cities, 60 feet. And given and this is just speculation, but if the cost of the road exceeds the value plus the anticipated return on investment, then he either won't, he'll just continue renting it, or maybe he'll sell to a neighbor. And the concern there is, because this is such an east-west, an important east-west corridor, especially, I don't know if you guys knew, but the school district purchased a big lot here for elementary school. If that road, I mean, don't get me wrong, you're not forced to approve this by any means, but this connection out to 3000 is important for the neighborhood, overall design of the neighborhood, and that's why it was originally part of their subdivision, but they didn't include, like I said, they had to drop that from their original proposal, so this was going to be part of Shoreline.
We've seen many times over that if this development isn't approved to go R3, somebody else might come in and say, fine, I'll do it at R1, because
yeah, you might be right.
You know, I mean, just because one applicant doesn't want to do it doesn't mean others won't.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's speculation. There's a chance that somebody might buy it and just say, I don't want it to go through there, and it's not worth the cost of the road, and to only get however many 4 lots. Because like I said, on our zoning ordinance, we have a maximum unit or number of units per acre, and we also have minimum lot size. And sometimes that on small projects, that really limits the number of lots that it will yield, because you have to, sometimes they meet the lot size, but then they don't meet the number of units per acre. I think that was the case on this one.
I would love to hear from the applicant. I know he's not here today, so I wouldn't really feel comfortable moving forward with kind of a voting scenario without understanding his rationale. I know that in Planning Commission, it was discussed that the lot size would yield up to 10 R3 sized lots, and the applicant was not considering that. It sounded like he was looking at 8 lots, if I remember correctly. But again, I would love to hear from him as far as like the cost feasibility for him, if that's a play, you know, a factor in why he wouldn't consider bigger lot sizes. Because I do agree that, you know, being congruent in the context would be nice if we can come to a reasonable solution. But again, it's not my money, so.
No, I'm not seeing the applicant with us. Can we move this to the agenda for the business meeting with possible approval, but with him there to answer some questions? And can you communicate with him and ask him to be there?
Yeah, I will make sure Keith is there.
Okay. All righty. Let's go ahead and move on. We'll discuss this in the business meeting. Let's go on to the next item. Number 5.
We are literally looking at a shoreline map. That cracked me up, sorry.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's classy.
Yeah, request to amend the zoning map, general commercial to storage unit zone. All right, so this is in our town center. Let me pull up the map here. The blue right there. So it's by Walmart. It's by Dollar Cuts. It's been vacant for a really long time. It has no frontage. It does have access. So it's kind of a difficult retail piece. And the applicant proposes to rezone it to storage units, indoor storage units. As you know, we recently created the zone. As part of the ordinance, he's required to provide a site plan. This is kind of what he would propose. Some parking on the west. This is the existing building. O'Reilly's is right there. It's, as far as floor area ratio, it's a pretty dense investment as far as how much building we get for taxable value. So that's a positive. It is a 3-story. It's a pretty tall building, 42 feet. But you can see this is what it'd look like to the south. So this is kind of between the back of that other building. And then north is what you see from the school. East, this is what you would see from 2000 West. And west, this would be the front elevation facing the Walmart parking lot. This is an elevation or a rendering of the front elevation. So if this were to be approved, then it would go to site plan where we would do a little bit more analysis on the facade and the architectural requirements. But the question here is about the use. Do you want storage units in the town center? And are there other better things that could happen in the town center? And if we want to hold out and wait for those better things, how long are we willing to wait? Or is something now better than maybe something better later? So those are all kind of the larger legislative decisions. And, you know, if we would rather have something else, or what our findings, it being a rezone, it could be about timing, it could be about infrastructure, it could be about context, it could be about the future of our town center. So the applicant's probably here, Colby Anderson or Nate Griffin. If you have any questions for me,
let me have Dave lead out. And then Dave, if you'd like to talk with the applicant or any of you, let me know. Dave, could you lead us out in this?
My biggest hesitation is that we have just approved a whole lot of storage units in the city. There are 2 new storage unit complexes that are both very large coming online. And I realize this is indoor, climate controlled. It's not something that we have, but it's still storage units. And I'm sure there's always a market for storage units, but I just feel like it's probably building too many at once. I would hate to see it be a struggle on the ones that are, I don't know. I'd like to see other opportunities than just keep building storage units right now.
Okay. Seth?
Yeah. Okay, I'm unmuted. Yeah, so in looking at this, I think I'm really on the fence here, and for a few reasons. One is that when we first talked about this concept, it was with the understanding that we just have had no interest in this area, and it's got, not a whole lot of commercial viability, and I think that still currently sits in place. And so for that reason, I'm supportive of this concept. As well as, we have other items that might potentially come forward, but this is a low impact in regards to traffic, which the concern I have around there is we talk about other projects creating traffic concerns, but I mean right here specifically, you are literally right across from an elementary and next to a junior high school, and so there, other high impact efforts or projects might, negatively affect that. I obviously know what happened when UDOT redesigned the road there and cut off access coming in from one direction, made it so that it's been a nightmare in my opinion. But and so I'm on the fence on this one. Definitely better than nothing. So I need a little more time to think about it.
Okay. Lisa?
I can see the value in it, but I also see a little bit of a limitation when we zone so specifically, and I think it does bear looking at a little bit closer, because the impact, as Seth was talking about, the impact on that traffic there, that's a really rough area, and there are several areas in our city that we hope to fix some of those traffic issues with improvements and changes in the road structure. But at this point, I don't know what the plans are for those streets and how we can get in and out of there. But I don't think this will have a huge impact on traffic, but I also don't think that this is the only use for this spot. So I'm not thrilled at the prospect of it. And I understand it could be an asset to us, and I do think that there would be people that use it, but I don't know that that's where I would want it in our town center.
Okay. Jordan?
I've said in previous meetings, I never think storage sheds are highest and best use. And in general, I'm not a fan. If this lot garners no interest, I think I would be willing to go forward with this. If another proposal were to present itself, I would have to look at that on its own merits. Right now, unless I see something else, I see no reason not to go forward with this. But that's kind of where I am.
Okay. Corinne?
Okay. I think that everybody's said what needs to be said for sure. I am grateful that people are interested, but at the same time, we have received quite a bit of applications for storage units recently, and I would bear to wait a little bit on this.
Okay. All righty. Is the applicant here?
Yeah, this is Colby. I'm on.
Okay. Colby, come on, will you?
Yeah, happy to answer any questions, obviously. We've been working for several months on this, as you know, and to get this zoning in place with this project in mind, trying to do everything we thought the city would want, the council, the planning commission, everyone. So I'm a little pinned back kind of by the feeling I'm getting from the council tonight, because I thought we were kind of heading in the right direction with kind of the same goals in mind. Hopefully you guys can see that this lot has been sitting there for a long time. And again, the traffic concerns, we've looked at the traffic numbers. I don't think you'll see it as a negative or anything in a way. If anything, it'll bring a little more traffic just for other uses as people come and go to this facility. We've tried to make it fit in well with the shopping center architecturally, meeting the commercial zone. Lisa mentioned kind of the specific zoning that we're asking for. And I mean, to be candid, that was at the request of the city, and we didn't want to go that way, but that's the way we went because the city said that's the way we should go. And that's the use, and that's based on the use. Obviously, if our project didn't go forward, it doesn't mean now just any old thing can go in there. We still have this specific project in mind, and that's our project, what we intend to build. That's why the zone was created. So, I hope you guys can continue to think about this over the next couple of weeks before the vote. Obviously, any comments or questions or thoughts on how to improve on this proposal, we'd love to hear about it, because again, the only intention the entire time over the last 3 to 4 months as we kind of chased this down through the different levels of the city was to make it work for the city and for you guys as the voting members of the council and for the residents. And I understand there's a lot of storage units coming, and that is what it is, but they are coming in different parts of the city. Part of the zoning that we put together for this project in mind created, a radius around this that no other storage could come in like this. And so it's not like you're going to see another one of these proposed or pop up within a mile or half a block away, because it won't be allowed per your zoning, the zoning that we work together on to put in place. So again, I think it's different, and it shouldn't be kind of lumped with those other projects because it's climate controlled. It is going to be very nice looking. I think in this area with the traffic and this, these major intersections, It'll be a really good commodity. I don't know what other word to use, but I think we've looked at this, we've looked at it in all directions, talked to a lot of people. We think it'll work really well right here. And again, we're willing to make it, what it needs to be for the city to enjoy it and want it there as well. So,
Colby, when I talked about the traffic, for me, that was more of a concern that your project actually helps with the traffic, and that it's not such a high traffic burden kind of project. So it was more around the fact that I am concerned about what future or other uses might bring in regards to, and we want our town center to have traffic and have people there, but unfortunately the design in that area is a little bit tough for traffic. So.
And I guess to that point, what we're proposing obviously is our main access, or our only access really, on the west side. We're not trying to utilize both accesses because we know how tough that Wendy's side is. And it just doesn't make sense to try and utilize that and send them down a dead end area. So to that point, we've looked at the traffic numbers, and if the city needed something more formal there, just as part of that component, we could kind of do a trip generation on that. But the only other thing is, just with the neighbors too, and I know a few of you have mentioned other opportunities or uses, and I'm aware that somebody's expressed interest in this, whether it's valid or not. I mean, it's kind of poor time, I guess, but at the same time, one of the adjacent landowners has kind of expressed that he would rather see this than other proposed uses like what that other gentleman had proposed. So you've got one of the direct neighbors saying, we would rather see this next to us than some sort of mixed use or residential. Kerry, the guy to the south, that building directly south, his name's Kerry. He expressed that in the planning commission meeting, and then we've swapped a couple emails since then. And he's actually in support of this use, again, versus other things that might have come up to some of you lately with another gentleman. So again, I know it's probably not preferred. You'd love to see an In-N-Out or Chick-fil-A or anything really awesome in there, but again, history usually kind of vets out certain things, and this is kind of what that is here. And that's why when, I've been watching this for a year and a half, to be honest with you. I was aware of this lot and been kind of keeping my eye on it. And not just because it's my project, but I just think that it's a good little use for this particular location, in a funny location in the shopping center that hasn't found a use, in 12 years and 13 years. So.
I do agree. As you're saying, my point was actually along with Seth's, that it is a tough area for traffic, and this wouldn't be a big issue for traffic with your site, or with your plan.
Yeah, I think it'd be positive traffic. I don't think you're going to see big peak traffic. You're going to see just some nice constant additional traffic streaming in on evenings and Saturdays and weekends for that matter. As people come and go from work, and on weekends when they're doing things that require, visiting their storage unit. So hopefully that would be a positive for the neighbors and people serving breakfast and lunch and dinners and other things as people come and go or want to drink a fizz. So.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Colby, thank you for being here. We've got lots to chew on, and what I would suggest, let's put this on the agenda for our business meeting in October, and let's bring at that point, having ruminated on this a little bit, our true desires for what ought to be here. And this is a good suggestion. Let's ruminate on that, and you have our numbers, the council's numbers, and council, you have ways of contacting him if you need that. Let's do that through the next couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Let's move on. Noah, can we go to item 6?
Okay. Economic Development Plan, Better Cities. So last time we introduced the plan to you. As you know, it's lengthy, and I think it's a tremendous value for the city. The consultant has put in a lot of detail and done a lot of interviews and listens to try to kind of get our unique flavor. I think that reflects that in the plan. I think we were we were maybe a little overwhelmed last time with just how much information and kind of what the next steps were and where do we go from here. So I went through the entire document and highlighted it with 3 different categories. So you have, oh, real quick, before I get into that, we did have some good conversation about it and made some suggestions. And Adam had made those changes in this most recent version of the plan.
Those were helpful.
Yeah, so he was good at summarizing what the changes were. So you have these different colors. You have this orange, which is an objective goal, and then, or excuse me, yeah, like an overarching objective, and then you have the specific goals and objectives that are this green color. So I went through the whole document and summarized this, and hopefully our conversation can be kind of focus around what's in the document, and hopefully we can figure out what we're most interested in having me pursue as the future goes on, and we can really cement whether or not there's anything that's missing as far as goals in the document, and whether or not there's any specific strategies that are missing. So,
on those pieces, do you foresee those being kind of in order as far as the goals there? Some of them seem to me like a little bit maybe
they're not sorted. No.
Okay.
No, there's no particular order of this. That's what I want from you. What the question is, what are the most important things on this list? And then the other question is there anything missing on this list? Do you feel like that you've been heard? Do you feel like this is the direction we should go in? Or if there's anything that you disagree with, that you don't think we should be doing, that should be removed from the list.
I have a couple of things. Whoever's starting, who's starting?
Like you.
Oh, myself.
It's
Okay.
Jordan. It's Jordan.
Go for it.
All right. I'll defer to Corinne if she wants to do some, if she has some mini comments. Go for it, Corinne.
All right. On the page 53 in the packet, just a note, it's not a big deal, but that the colors in the graph don't match the legend for the universities, by the way. You have like light blue and then you've got purple for Weber. So I'm like, okay, which one of these really goes with which? So
I feel like we should align the school colors with the legend.
No, not necessarily, but I think they did in the legend, but they didn't in the graph.
Adam, are you here? I believe
No.
Adam's probably here from Better Cities.
Adam's
Okay.
here.
Anyway, and then just
Man,
one company that I felt like should be included as far as they listed all sorts down Salt Lake and everything, but one that wasn't in there was like Autoleave. It's in Riverdale, and they produce airbags and they employ quite a few people. But overall, it was an excellent document. So I can't say much. Those are the only 2 things I picked out.
I'd like to just say that, while there's a lot to chew on here and talk about, one of my concerns is that there are some places, I don't want to use the word contradictory, maybe our choices, where, we're probably not going to get both A and B in some places, and we probably ought to address that in separate meetings and kind of talk about the benefits of A versus B, where some of these things are probably not both going to happen. There's so much here. I don't know where to start, except for I think that we need to kind of talk about how we're going to use it. And I think the mayor's suggestion last time was the right suggestion. We need to find a way to break this up into 6 or 8 discussions and not try to chew on this on one meeting.
Need to make quick correction. Autoleave's actually in Ogden, so my apologies there. Okay, sorry.
No, I agree with Dave's sentiment. I kind of thought when I first opened the packet, I was like, okay, so the first section is how many pages? And so when we jumped into it, I was like, oh, it's kind of the rearranged version of the entirety, and moving things to the appendices was helpful. But we still were left with big pieces. So I have lots of like little comments and questions about some of the metrics and whether they're measurable or just maybe a little bit more information, but they're just more smatterings of information or questions I have on each where I didn't have the opportunity to really dig in and ask meaningful questions. So like, for instance, on like one of the graphs, it talked about 70% of the jobs are in a specific healthcare industry, and then it said that represents 22% of the jobs or something. And I was really confused on something like that. And then there was recommendations to work with certain partners for female-driven households or single-parent households, and I was interested to learn more about that. Some of the statements around the poverty level by age was really telling, but kind of led me to certain conclusions in other areas, and so I need to break it down into smaller pieces for me to really be able to give meaningful feedback.
So if I could interject, so we do have our subcommittee, Jordan and Lisa, and if there's like, you guys probably have your list of typos and little things with the document, little questions and things here and there. I think we could maybe work through Jordan and Lisa, or even directly with me or Adam to kind of make little corrections. But at a certain point, we need to cut Adam loose as our consultant. I don't think we need to subject to him to months and months of discussion. We can certainly do that. It's our plan. I'd be happy to talk about economic development every single meeting, but I think at a certain point we need to say, okay, what this body of work is good. We agree with it, and then we can refine it, and maybe we have a little section that's the start of it that kind of helps prioritize. But really, is if I could focus us less away from each individual on page, whatever this, you're missing a period, and more towards like,
so
yeah, I like the idea of diversifying the workforce. That's what we really ought to be going here for.
I'd like to take a crack at one of the items. So one thing that I think we've overdone in here is a large portion of this pamphlet reads like a brochure for all of these other amenities. Like we have a whole page dedicated to, actually looks like a page and a half, to Health Center Theater, where it is, what it has. And while I would love something like Health Center Theater, I don't need to describe it in so much detail. Gardner Village, we've dedicated pages and pages to. I think saying something like Gardner Village, which is this, or something like that, I think we've put too much of their brochure in our economic development plan. And so I think we're a little overkill on some of that. Where if we really can cut some length out, we can say, well, I want something like Gardner Village. Here's a kind of a site plan. Here's a little bit of what it has, but we just have too much of a brochure in here for other cities.
And one of the things I did too is I highlighted everything that's kind of like analysis, research. Those are the pages and pages of kind of brochure-like information to hopefully kind of expedite our ability to kind of comb over this. Like you were saying, whole pages of that.
I would make a proposal that what we do is we don't want to take up all of Adam's time, and I realize that he is, we don't want to commit him for months and months. So, what if we gave Adam a recess? And of course, this is just a hypothetical. We give you a recess for a couple of months, and then we take and divide this up into sections of each goal. And maybe in the next successive work sessions, we discuss what's involved in that goal and how it applies to our city, keeping in mind that, and I wouldn't go in order because I would try to pick the ones that we think are most applicable first. But then we have to keep in mind that some of that is a give and take. And that's kind of where I was going with my earlier comment is, like some of these things, if we were to put an emphasis on like the Gardner Village thing, we probably simultaneously wouldn't want to put an emphasis on something else that we probably couldn't do together. So what
Yeah,
we
that's
ought
what I
to
mean by prioritizing. Like, what do you want me to work on the most?
Well, when I say prioritizing, if we look at these goals and say, okay, which one are we most likely to be able to act on first? Which one do we think we're closest to? And take that one and address that section in depth of what we think we can do, what we think we can't do. And then maybe after we've gone through a few meetings of this, we could bring Adam back in and say, okay, these are where we thought we could really build on. These are things that maybe our priorities be. Can you help us sort that out? That way we're not wasting his time as we try to philosophize on some of this. But there's 8 goals here. It's really hard for us to try and say we're going to take on 400, 500 pages in one meeting. I think we can take on a section.
And
That's
there's
just an idea.
And I agree with that, Dave. There's some of those goals though that are having some synergies together as well. And I think we might be able to tackle 2 of them, or some that are kind of compatible goals, like, the first one on 193, capitalizing on industrial, and then bringing retail and restaurants or whatever, something like that, to where we kind of look at those. And Noah, my comments are not, while I did find some missing periods, I can give those to you later. The comments were more around, so like one of the recommendations is to look at what Tooele City did with the temple. And if I'm taking in the context of when this was written, they had a big mixed use big multi kind of development going on there. But now that all kind of fell apart. And so I'm going, okay, is the recommendation then to work with the church? Yeah. I just don't know. I didn't know if it was saying like, be more responsive to the community and changing things, or is it to, create these kind of developments? Or
no, that's a great thing that you brought up. I wasn't sorry. Hopefully I didn't discourage you guys from kind of bringing up your list of things. I think where it references the temple, it's somebody's comment. So they just kind of like put in, somebody in the community when they did the interview said, we should do what Tooele did, but maybe we should weigh in and say whether or not we think that we should do that now that we know where the temple is. That's the hard part. Is it kind of the news of where it was going kind of came out at the tail end of this. They tried kind of incorporating that, but I don't know. That'd be a question for you guys. Would you want to do what do you want to do around the temple?
Let me stop this right here. How many of you could support Dave's proposal, not a motion, Dave's proposal that we cut Adam loose for a time, and that do you remember when we first began this a year ago, we said that we wanted to draft the final document, that we wanted the help from a school to help us know what to look for. And when we've got that data in front of us now, we give him a recess for a few, for a time. I don't know what that time would be. And that we then we now work on a draft of our very own with all the information that he's provided with us, with these goals and objectives in mind.
I'm okay with that if it accomplishes kind of giving him the opportunity to not be kind of on the hook forever. If it looks the same to him, whether we hold off for some time or not,
we also need to have a deadline. Sorry, Seth, if you weren't done.
No, that's good. I agree.
Okay,
I think it's important that this isn't a master plan revisit. This is an active study guide that's meant to get a discussion going, right? And to have us kind of get some insights into where we want to go. So I think it's more of a discussion that we are supposed to be having as a council, and this is our study guide for it. So I don't think it's so much about saying we're approving this document as it's us saying we're discussing this document.
And then
eventually we're going to have to decide which ones we're going to prioritize and go after first. And that's kind of where I'm thinking we need to spend some time.
Corinne's proposal was to have a deadline.
Yeah.
That we set a deadline.
Which we asked Noah to do as well, to have it completed by a certain time frame, because we didn't want to drag this out. So I think it's 3 months tops.
No, 3 months tops.
Yes.
Okay, now, do we form a new task force to do this, or do we go on with the task force that's been using it to bring things back to us?
I think we're at discussion point. I think we all need to weigh in. I don't know if
Okay.
we,
Okay,
I don't think being part of that task force, I think that we've already discussed where we want to go with it. Now I agree it's ready for the whole council.
okay.
I would like to try and see if at the end of this, same thing we did on the parks plan. I love this thing, but a plan is, we got to get it down to, I don't know if you can do it in less than 30 pages, but I do think we need to be succinct in our plan. We can have supporting data, but I think that should be a goal as well, as our plan can't be 400 pages long.
I agree with that, but at the same time, I do appreciate the concept of offering actual ideas and examples to get people's brains going of what could we do with this area, with that
Sure.
area.
Put it in the
I would like
appendix.
I would like this
Sometimes
to be the
it's good.
supporting documentation for an abridged Cliff Notes.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Noah?
Mayor, could I add?
Who,
comment
is that
here?
Brody?
That's Brody.
There's Brody.
Is that okay if I add a comment here, Mayor?
You bet.
Okay. Just to kind of refine it a little bit, it's kind of where you're headed, but so what you see on the screen here that Noah's showing you, that would be the actual plan part of this. What has been produced by Better Cities is the supporting document. So I would, as you go forward, you don't necessarily need to critique and modify and adopt what they've produced. That's not the plan. So the plan is going to be the specific goals and objectives that you put together. And to better refine that, I would encourage you to focus in on what our efforts are going to be, which means where are we going to put our money,
Right.
and where are we going to put our time.
Yep.
And those are kind of the things we want to kind of laser in on.
Hey, let me see if I can.
to build on that, if I may, to build on that, I just wanted to say that I think that all of this information is good information. And I'm not trying to say that we should limit this as our reference manual, but what we need to do is what Brody's saying, and that we need to say, okay, which of these things can we target now, which might be later, and what is our plan to attack achieving some of these goals?
What can we lay
and which
frameworks
ones take
for?
priority?
Oh, I like it. That's the difference between a study and a plan,
Thank you.
So we start formulating the plan of attack versus the study that can pontificate on things for pages and pages. So I like where this is going. I think I can definitely, I think I hear what you're saying, and I'm happy to work with it, and I can talk with Adam. I don't know if Adam wants to weigh in or not, of whether, the other thing, if we want Adam to be with us the whole time, we could extend his contract, but he's probably already put in all the time and delivered on everything he said he was going to do.
Mayor, you were going to say something.
Unless he wants to just keep working for free for the next year to 2 years.
I would accept that if that's what is necessary.
He's a pretty good guy,
I'll second that. Adam, you're in.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate that. No, I just want to reiterate that, we really want this to be a plan that's going to be actionable and something that doesn't just sit on the shelf, but it's something that can be referenced, obviously, and can help with directing resources for the city to create, implementable strategies and really drive results to the community. We're happy to participate in whatever capacity you'd like us to, whether it's coming to the city and conducting workshops to work through condensing this down and helping to prioritize, or just sit back for 3 months and wait for you guys to come back with how you'd like it structured. Anything from A to Z, just let us know how you'd like us to assist with this initiative.
So Adam, if we move forward and just kind of go as Brody designed, and then we just have general technical advice, and support kind of questions for you, is that something that we can come back to without renewing a contract, or is that something that we need to negotiate moving forward?
Yeah, I do think that just from a contract perspective, we've invested, I think, a lot more time and energy into both this and the retail study than what we've contracted for. So from our firm's perspective, we've gone above and beyond our budget. But again, we really wanted to create something that would be valuable to the community.
No, that's important to know. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, we'd be, again, and I don't know what we would have to do in terms of, just developing an hourly rate schedule or something along those lines with a cap to it where you can still utilize our services to whatever degree you'd like to. But I think from our perspective of budget and what we've invested in this deliverable, that's where we are at this point.
You fulfilled your component.
And one thing that I've talked with Adam about, just exploring, because these guys are really good, and sometimes it's good to bounce ideas off of them. And so, from my perspective, it would be good to have some sort of hourly rate availability to kind of continue our relationship with them, because I feel like they have provided a good value for us.
I feel like before we do that, we really have to target where we want to focus our energy.
Yep, I agree
We
with
can
David.
talk all day long.
Yep, I agree with David. Council, what I'd like to do in order to move us along, Noah and Brody, do you think you have marching orders that we need to, do you understand the disposition of the council and where we want to go?
Yeah, we'll get to talk about each one of these goals. It should say, actually, it should instead of goals, it should actually say strategies. But
yeah,
anyway, yeah, we'll get into the nitty gritty of all of these, and that's going to take some time. So I think this is exciting. This is good that we're talking about economic development, and we can keep talking about it on our work sessions. Unless you guys want to do it during some of your, if you want to hold special work sessions, we can move it along quicker.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Well, we clearly don't hear enough from economic development and meetings, so it's good to give you a good chunk here.
Okay, but we've got a goal of 3 months, right, council?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, 3 months from when? By the end of the year?
You know what, I'd say by the end of the year, only because by the time we get going, we're only got 3 months left, and we probably don't have a full December.
Well, we don't, and we've talked that already. We're probably limited to, unless we call a special work session early in December, we
That'd be good.
probably will not be holding. In fact, I know we won't be holding a meeting in a work session the week of Christmas. We may meet before Thanksgiving in a special work session. May even be a special meeting altogether. But our goal is the end of the year. All right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Just so I'm
still
clear, are we talking about this once a month or twice a month?
Either one. Maybe as we get closer, I mean, maybe we see how it goes next month and we double it up in November if we need to. I don't know.
I think we could easily do it twice a month because there's so much here.
Yeah.
Smaller bites are easier for us to focus on.
And really, I think as like your bulleted list up there at the top of this whole section, I would like to start expanding that out. I think it's easier to add than it is to cut. So I'd like to start with the bulleted list and start adding detail into the bulleted list with this as our information. And I think you'll end up with a fairly good document that's very succinct. And like, I would love to have an output that says, hey, in order to get good economic development around the temple, we need to expand 2500 West or something like that, where we have actionable plans instead of just, we think this is a good idea to do something like this.
Okay. All right. You got enough, Noah?
More than enough.
Okay, let's move on. The next two items are both RDA based. We decided to put these in a work session and work through an RDA issue during this work session. So let's talk those. To act on these, we'll have to have a special session for the RDA.
Yeah, this is informational only. Holy cow, sorry. Just if I can get to the end of this. Oh, here we go. All right. this next item, if you look at this map, is surrounding the development around Pete's Factory. And you might be saying, well, we talked about this before, and we did. But the landowner has kind of, he took that information and recommendations, and they've kind of restructured what maybe they would like to ask for. And so the question at hand is whether or not you want to invest in this. I'm kind of couching it as a two for one kind of thing. If you see here the red line, is what he's asking for is money up front to help cement in these cross access easements and build the drive aisles, but also build the infrastructure underneath here. So the first objective would be to alleviate a real traffic problem that we've heard about from the residents. And one of the ways to alleviate congestion is to disperse it and give it a variety of ways to get out. And so while we know that the Briggs will probably have a different plan regardless, it'll still need access through here. And so this would build that drive aisle and the needed infrastructure so that a retail building could be built here. And then it would improve this with infrastructure and drive aisle all the way through here so that you could probably, we heard all about the feasibility of making a U-turn, whether or not you think that's ridiculous or not to make a U-turn here or not, but this would kind of disperse this traffic out to the east, and it would probably be a little bit easier to turn left here than it would be to here when you're dealing with these people that are trying to come in.
So would these be city roads at this point?
No, they would be driveways with a public cross-access easement so that the public could go through here, take these shortcuts, and then through here with this development, we had the details worked out, but we'll have to work them out again. So you'll be able to go in here and go to Smith's. So anytime you can get to a nearby destination without going on the busy road, that can improve safety. So that's the first one. The second is, with the things that spur development are access and also infrastructure. So the infrastructure piece would help this happen, and it would also help this happen. And I know we talked about it. We're not quite as excited about, some of these storage units, but they will add taxable value. But then I think we were more excited about this building to the north. Sorry, I'm sitting here pointing to this. I could have just pulled this up. So this is a flex office warehouse where a lot of small businesses locate, and they usually have a garage in the back. And then that would be just a kind of boring storage unit. So you're talking about incentivizing 3 new buildings and alleviating or kind of helping alleviate a traffic problem. And so Ed Gertsch, I'm not sure he could explain his business interest, but he's involved with this project along with Mark Thane, and I think they have another business partner, Wall. So they're saying that if the city can help them with this, that will really expedite the investment in here. And so with the RDA, the sooner your buildings get in, the longer they have time to accrue more increment. So the sooner these buildings will be built, the more that we'll have to work with in other areas. So I believe that they're probably on this call. I know I talked to them right before the meeting, so you can ask questions about their project. But this is the estimate of what they think that it would cost to do that. Right there, 453. So if you look at the EOS over 20 years, we're giving them 500. If you look at US Cold, I think theirs was up to 1.2 million. So proportionate, it's probably a little high just for kind of more of industrial and a retail use that maybe doesn't always get it, but the added benefit of having some of the cross access legalized and having the drive aisles built immediately up front, that seems to in my eyes, be probably more attractive and spurring some development sooner than it would happen later. So yeah, hopefully that explains it. So obviously we're not voting. You just, if you're interested, then we would work with Paul and the applicant to create a incentive agreement. And so if you have any specific details, like I said in my staff report, we'd want to put a timeline attached to when, if we do give them the money, then we'd want to see those drive aisles built by a certain time, and we'd want to still see the project come to fruition for those 3 buildings in a certain amount of time. The corner building, is probably the most exciting to have a retail, and it'd probably be a multi-tenant retail with drive-through, maybe another restaurant or something, but they can speak to that. I don't think they have anybody necessarily on the hook, but anyway, there you have it.
Seth and Lisa, would you like to comment first? And then if you'd like to speak with the applicants, they're here.
Yeah. Hey, Noah, can you show me which street is actually 5th? Is it this black one next to the red?
A little farther.
So Fifth West.
Not in this shot.
No.
No, it's a ways up.
Okay.
Let me show you. So this is what can you see my mouse? This is what we're talking about. And then Fifth West will come through here.
Okay, because I thought, why are we?
This is like halfway.
I thought.
Yeah, so that driveway is about right there.
Okay.
Then this driveway is right here that would connect through all the way through here. And that connects all the way through here. And this development all the way through here. So it kind of creates some good circulation.
Is there a curb cut there?
Where? Right here?
Yes.
Yeah, they say that they've already worked it out with UDOT, and there's already a curb cut.
Nice.
Okay.
So
what's the plan to do with that? On that, there's still some undeveloped land there. Is that enough land to do something with?
And just a quick question with that. There's kind of 2 different plans. There's the one where you've drawn the line going straight through. And then the other plan that we saw with the whole storage unit quite some time ago, that nothing came of it at that time, that went down around that angle. Which one's the proposal?
Yeah, that's one of my concerns too, because if there are a lot of people coming through here and they have to do a weird turn with a tight radius, that's going to be tough. And I talked to Ed about that before. He mentioned that there could be both. There could be kind of this, and here I'll pull it up right here, and maybe he can speak to that. But I think that's probably gonna be inconvenient. So I would want to see it go straight through here too.
Agreed.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it does cut that lot in half, but you could do both for sure, especially if it's a lot,
Yeah, if there's a car lot, this is probably just more parking because it's underneath the power lines anyway. And that, putting that straight across there might create a little bit of a awkward shape, but you probably could accommodate with that parking.
So where if that was a potential car lot, where would the building go? Because you
There's no
can't build a building.
The building's right here.
That's the car lot building?
So when they were doing this before, I think, that the used car business that was interested has kind of found another place now. So I don't think they're really on the hook anymore. But if that was the case, they would create a end tenant space that they could occupy. And then all of this parking is where they put their cars. And then you come in here to make a deal.
Okay. Yeah, the end tenant.
So I do think that this is a better option than the previous one. I think this is more beneficial to the city, especially in attracting businesses. As you said, you're already preparing the infrastructure, so somebody doesn't have to come in and say, well, we have to develop everything we need. We've already got the roads and the access points. And I do love the idea of that east flow that they can come up and around, even if they continue on up to 5th, or if they flip onto 1700 there. I think that's helpful. And in comparison, as you were saying, with the other places that we've helped, it's relatively, it's good. So those are just my thoughts. This is more preferred than the previous one that we saw.
Yeah, I think before they were wanting some money to give a
Facade.
facelift to the building and I don't know.
This helps the whole area, so it's a really good financial investment for all of that area, not just for one building.
Yeah, so I apologize. I had to step out for just a second. But it sounds like from the packet and a little bit of what I caught that this is within the realm of financial feasibility of the RDA, that there are adequate funds to do this and then some. I do agree from briefly seeing the previous iteration with the facade stuff that this is probably a better use of these dollars. Is there any, maybe, I didn't know if you spoke to it, are there other comparable RDA funds that we've dispersed in this kind of manner that we could compare this to?
Well, we have most of our deals that we've done are actually like a post-performance thing where they build it and then we give a tax rebate after it's built and taxed.
Kind of like what we've described with the doll.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the standard incentive because the risk is really low. If they don't build it, you don't lose anything. This is different where you are offering money up front, but you can also make sure it's an agreement that they perform. But as far as the total dollar amounts, it's comparable. You know, EOS over time, it will reach about 500. The next item you'll see that has potential to reach over $1 million.
Over 20 years.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So this, I don't know if the exact dollars and cents will balance out for the taxable value of those buildings based off of what we're giving them. But sometimes it's hard to quantify the convenience factor of those drive aisles and the cross access easements that might be difficult to come by.
So I'm not against creating access so that things can happen, but usually when you do that, you tie it directly to things that have to happen. So in other words, there are deadlines. If we fund this, there's a short time window to when they have to utilize it, because it doesn't make any sense. And this is pretty common practice when you read from other cities. If they're going to fund something, they expect you to act within a certain time frame. So I would absolutely require that for my support, just because I can see on the one side, on the west side, it has more value than just the private access because there will be some public benefit. It may be on the other side as well, but the real issue is that if we help create the access, it's for something to happen. So there's got to be a short timeline to when that's fulfilled. And I don't know if this is legal, I can ask Paul, but I've heard before that people do things like this and say, we'll pay for the access up front, but if you don't build within X number of months or year or whatever, then you have to pay it back, because this was for the purpose of a development, not just for fun, you know.
The applicant's here, maybe he could speak to the timing of what he wants, if the mayor wants to hear from him when it's appropriate.
First, I want to know if it's legal. Paul?
Yeah, when it comes to RDA funds, I mean, really, you kind of feel like the bank. You know, it's like they're asking for assistance, and if they want to participate, you know, the city's under no obligation to participate, and so we can attach deadlines and conditions that we think are reasonable and appropriate. That's very legal.
Yeah, that would be a requirement for me as well. What I fear, I'm not saying that they would do this, is we would build all of these, and now their land is worth a lot more, and they sell it. And so I want to make sure that there is a performance clause in this that is, that they can't just, we make their land worth a lot more money and it just gets sold off.
Ed or Mark, do you want to address the council?
While they're getting on, the selling it off isn't as bad if somebody were to do something with it. Selling it off and sitting on it means that we invested in something with no return.
Right, but the city's not in, hopefully not in the business of just trying to value
Agreed.
other people's properties to get them some more money in a sale.
I agree.
Ed, are you there?
He's on mute. I don't know if he knows how to take him in Zoom. I see
Should be able to
Mark.
hear Mark if he's got a microphone.
Mark?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me okay, Mayor?
Yes, I can. Council, do you have questions for Mark?
Yeah, I think that timeline piece is important to kind of discuss and what those look like. Mark?
So yeah, I can address that. I was hoping Ed was the one that was going to talk here, but
He's probably cursing at his computer right now.
yeah, I can imagine Ed struggling with his computer. So let me go ahead. The timeline for the buildings directly south of the pizza factory, I don't personally have any heartburn with setting those standards because that is something that we would be willing to move forward in a timely manner. Probably we've drug our feet on that just because of the market over the last 8 years. There just hasn't been a demand for more commercial or even these kind of office warehouse given the house tops. But with your new mixed ordinances, that's changing and has changed, and the vision of the city has changed. So I think that's not a problem with us moving forward. I'd be a little, and Ed and I haven't talked about this, but be a little uneasy to make a significant commitment on that corner piece just because we've entertained multiple tenants on that, and with COVID they've just, as Noah knows, they've kind of shut down. And so when is it appropriate to build another commercial out there in Syracuse, and when will COVID wind down a little bit, get back to normal? I just would hate to commit to something and then have this COVID stretch out for another 2 years and just can't perform, right?
But as far as the driveways, you guys could build those right away.
Yeah, so if the idea is, hey, if we're going to fund this, you build the roads and access to the other, yeah, that's not a problem. We could build those.
I think I'm on here now, if you can hear me.
We can hear you.
We hear you.
Okay, I was just going to mention the same thing Mark said. We get an immediate benefit by building the road, or I should say at least the city and the residents get immediate benefit, so there'd be no reason for us not to get the road completed immediately. The road going to the west to the Briggs property doesn't really benefit us, as we can see, but we can understand that there's a give and take here. And so that if the city is willing to help us with that, then it makes good sense to install it right away.
Okay.
Oh, that's helpful.
Well, I think building the road now definitely prepares for the future. We want it to develop, so it helps. Even if things aren't ready for a while, nobody wants to build when there's road being built. You want that in first, and then stuff happens, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we hear all the time, build the infrastructure first.
Right.
Council, what I'm hearing is that we should add an RDA meeting to our business meeting in October and further discuss and perhaps act on this.
Yes, for myself.
You good with
Yeah.
that?
Me too.
But I would ask that by that time we have more of a plan of what those timelines look like and what they're willing to commit.
A timeline would be good, definitely.
Paul and I and the applicant will work to create a incentive agreement.
Yep. Ed and Mark, does that seem good to you?
That
Yeah.
seems reasonable to me.
Okay.
Yeah, Mark as well.
Okay, let's move that forward then to an RDA meeting where we can actually act. But we thought it would be good to put this work session as part of this one. Thank you. Thank you, Noah.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You bet. Thanks, Noah. Let's go to item G. Brody, this is city personnel.
Thanks, guys.
The city personnel and policy and procedures manual.
Okay.
Did we skip the mixed use?
I was gonna say, I think
Yeah.
we might have mixed up 7 and 8 on F.
Oh, did we?
Yeah, the Dahl property RDA.
Yeah.
I thought I was done.
Dang it.
Oh, we're gonna come up with a few items ad hoc here too.
Oh, you're right. We did forget about that one, didn't we?
Hey, how you doing? Good. I'm glad you was on there. I couldn't get it to unmute.
Andrew,
Not a problem now.
now you can.
Nope, I think
we can
exactly
still hear
right.
you.
It's a problem. we
somebody mute
all
him.
have.
Mute him.
Okay.
Oh, man. You guys have been cracking me up tonight.
Let's back up one.
Okay. Sorry, I thought that we kind of talked about that, but so this next one is in connection with the office. Like Jerry said, banks are not lending on what you call spec buildings. A speculative building is something you build with hopes that if you build it, they will come. Banks are saying, no, I don't buy that. I'm not going to give you any money until you tell me that. Jerry says up to 80% of it pre-leased, which is a big portion of the building. I've heard other people that they say they've built office buildings and then it never fills up 100% over a period of 20 years, or sometimes it's full and then they lose tenants, but for the bank to get it going, they want a large portion of it. So the way I think we should, what I would recommend is to, since it is a little bit risky, but we do want to show our support and try to expedite it and maybe reduce some risk that the banks foresee on lending, is we can take, this is the same thing we did on EOS. We can take, so the CDA gets 60% of the taxable value, and we could do 75% of the 60%. So there is still some property taxes coming in to the city. We're not foregoing everything. If we wanted to, we could make that higher if we really wanted to. And there's a couple options too. We could give the rebate for the value of just the new office building, or we could actually make it for the entire project, which probably makes a little bit better sense to expedite it further. And so doing some math on the common leasing rates, if we did just the building, it's equivalent to pre-leasing for 20 years, a little bit less than 5% of the building. So that's far below the 80%. So to put it in perspective of how much money that they have to come up with to build this thing, it does, I think it greases the wheels, but it's in no means a source of financing. But I think I'll just demonstrate to the banks that there's a little bit less risk because the city's partnering with them. And then also understanding that there could be future deals with specific tenants in the future, especially national tenants or people from out of state that are looking to maybe occupy the whole building. And I think there's a market for that. But I think there's also your dentists and doctors' offices too that there's probably a market for. But I think a big win for the city would be to get try to diversify on our office and move away from just medical office to have a true office with employment. So if we did the entire project, that might bump us up to maybe about 8% of the building being considered to be pre-leased. It also depends on what you consider the leasable price per square foot. So maybe that's more like 15% of the building. We don't really know, but and the nice thing about this is the risk is a lot lower. If he doesn't build it, the CDA is not obligated to give any money at all. This is just an incentive. If he builds it, then we'll rebate the portion of what he's generating for his project. Does that make sense?
So I understand where you're going with this, but isn't it premature to make this decision before we approve the project that's associated?
Yeah, we won't want to approve an RDA incentive for a project that is not.
It hasn't got the zoning yet.
No, yeah, you're right.
Well, I think it's zoned accurately for for the office space right now. So it's zoned. He could build that office today if he wanted.
Jordan's got a point. It is commercial there.
Okay, that's a fair point, but we don't have the application for the rest of the project. So if that's contingent
Yeah, this would have to be approved
after that,
after the other one, assuming it gets approved.
Remember, we were trying to consolidate a work session with an art. What we're trying to do is be ready for something when it comes.
Okay.
By having this discussion ahead of time to know where you are.
Yeah, and remember, an RDA incentive is in no ways approval of any zoning. RDA board doesn't, you guys in the city council, but you take off that hat and consider the RDA for economic development. And the nice thing about this is it's a commitment of a percentage of the future taxable value. So if you say he doesn't get the zoning or it doesn't happen, then we would be rebating basically nothing, agricultural value.
So if you just want to know where we stand, if that goes through, I would want to do anything possible to help make sure the whole thing comes to fruition. So
yes, hypothetically speaking, if a project were to be zoned and move forward, I would support this, as these are what CDA, RDA funds are set aside for.
Yep.
Yeah, the RDA agreement could kind of have some of those stipulations of kind of relieving ourselves of those commitments if certain things don't happen.
You got my support.
I'm on that same side. I support it. Once again, we don't want to see anybody fail in this. I still have concerns that this might be difficult to fill over the next few years with the COVID impact, but I'm not about to withhold any help that we can offer in order to fill that spot. So I'm supportive of this.
Sounds good.
And again, council, this was an attempt to try to maximize our time together so that we didn't have to hold a work meeting for an RDA.
Right.
Yep.
Thank you.
All righty. Let's move on. Brody, let's talk about the city's personnel policies, procedures manual.
Okay. So yeah, from time to time, we do have updates and edits to our personnel manual. I want to thank Steve and his team. Shauna Greer did the heavy lifting on this for us, and with the help of Paul and Leanne. So this is just an update that's highlighted for you. Steve put together the kind of the table of contents of the changes we made. I won't go through them in the interest of time, but if there's some that you want to talk about, let's spend our time on that.
It looks like I'm up. Mayor?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Okay, I read through it. All the changes look good. I do have to ask, is it necessary to put in there about paying a widow of a veteran who was in a war between 52 and 55? I mean, 1952 and 55, because they'd have to be in their 80s by now. Just wondering, is that like old language? What's up with that?
I think is that a federal law or state?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a federal law that we're trying to comply with, so we're adding it to our policy.
Because I'm like, how many late 70s, early 80s are
Never know.
Okay. Well, thank you. That was a lot of work. Thanks, both of you.
Okay.
Everyone involved.
David, can I have you visit with us now?
It mostly looks like compliance to me. I don't have a big issue, so.
Okay. Jordan,
you're muted.
Yeah, I pretty straightforward.
Okay.
I mean, there was a few interesting things I didn't know that I learned, and every time I read this, about every couple months, it's a good read.
It is exhilarating.
It is.
Yeah, no,
Learn something new every time.
Yeah, we're good. I'm glad we're testing more people. I'm glad we get paid, even though we lose money to jury duty. I'm good. I'm good with it.
I will say this, that, since I've struggled sleeping, I really appreciate you putting this out. It's helped immensely.
Lisa?
Yep, I agree with everybody's thoughts.
Okay, can we
Especially Dave's.
Yeah. Consent calendar material?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Cassie, would you put that on consent? Brody, let's talk about the flash vote.
Okay. I'm going to share my screen here. Okay, that's better. Okay, so we sent the flash vote out August 24th through 26th. I sent a link to you in the packet, so you had a chance to review all the comments and the responses that we got. So just for some background, we had 912 people signed up. So this survey has had the most I think participation in all the surveys that we've done so far. Each one gets more and more people, so that's good. 776 people participated. Of those, 580 we could filter out as actual residents. That's a 64% response rate, which is actually really good.
How do we get so many? It seems like we're growing the people outside of the city faster than we're growing in.
Yeah, there's and I don't know. I think there's some people that might technically be in Clearfield, but they're engaged with our rec programs and that sort of thing. So I think there's a significant portion over there in the Syracuse side of Clearfield. And then there's also people that are in the unincorporated county that participate, and there's probably some West Point people on the border, but I don't have the details because I don't have access to the information because this is a third party. To keep everything private. As far as whether the validity of the survey and the confidence level that we can have in the results, we only needed 380 residents to have a margin of error of 5% with a 95% confidence level. So this has been deemed to be a 4% margin of error with a 95% confidence level that the answers to the survey would accurately reflect what the whole city would answer. So let's start with question one. Purpose of question one was just to kind of get people to describe their internet service, and there were some options given them to select. So interestingly enough, on this question, about half the city, or half, I shouldn't say that, half the respondents felt that their speed is basically good enough. They're okay with their speeds. About half, they could select more than one. That's why it's not a pie chart. So about half the city, their primary use for internet is work, business, or homework. And then a little less than that, their primary use is for entertainment, leisure, social purposes. There's about a third of the respondents that said they desperately need faster internet. And we'll get into kind of what that is and where it's at a little further into the presentation. And then there's a small percentage that basically said it's, their internet's great, they could even get by with a slower internet. So that kind of gives us like a baseline understanding of where people are and how they use the internet. The second part of question one was just an open-ended question of what problems do you have? So we kind of just fished for, what problems do you have? 156 respondents took the time to enter in their problems. Now this part of the question shouldn't be extrapolated into a percentage of the city. It's just broad data that you had 156 people come to you and express their problem. This would be the equivalent of if 156 people came to a council meeting and during public comment, they gave you input on problem with internet service. So 50 people indicated they have, these are raw, open-ended answers. I just categorize them into 4 different categories to make it a little easier to digest. You can go through them specifically and just read them on your own. 50 people said they have reliability issues. Almost that amount said speeds are too slow. 38 said there's just a lack of choice. That's the biggest problem that they have. And then 35 people came to you and said prices are too high for what they get here in Syracuse. Okay, so that's just kind of background data to kind of give us an idea of what people are thinking. Now we kind of, in question 2, we kind of boil it down to some sort of level of satisfaction. And on the whole, if I were to describe how people in Syracuse feel about internet in one word, I would say they feel kind of eh. And that's really it. It's all right. It's okay. It's not horrible. It's not, it's not.
No strong feelings.
Yeah, it's not great. So as far as internet costs for the value that they receive on a whole, it tends to go towards the middle, which is neutral. 1 on this scale, 1 is very dissatisfied and 5 is very satisfied. Other types of aspects of internet service, like their customer service, uptime, that sort of thing, kind of same thing. It's in the kind of okay, neutral, not great, not horrible. And then internet speed does on the whole, tend to be a little above that, on the more towards the satisfied side of the scale. Not by much, but just a little bit. Enough that I could round up to a 4 instead of a 3.
Brody, this represents everybody, right? They couldn't skip questions.
So yeah, they could skip, but it tells you how many people answered the question, and it's all within 5 or 10 people, I think, usually on it.
Okay.
So yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, now question 3 starts to get into actionable data that, what would people do given a certain situation? So would you sign up? These were prices and speeds that we had known are available from an internet fiber company. And so we gave the respondent options that if you had this speed for this price, which one of these would you pick, or none, or are you just not sure? So when you put them all together, over half, 52%, would sign up for one of the packages. So there's the $65 for 250 meg, 78 for 1 gig, and $229 a month for 10 gig. There was 28% who basically said, nah, they wouldn't sign up for any of them. They'd probably keep their existing service and just be happy with it. And then 18 were kind of sitting on the fence. So there's 18% out there that, they may sign up for one of them, they may not. And then there's 2%, the other was an open-ended question where it was kind of like I think a lot of them just kind of counter offered with, what they would want to buy if it's not any of these options. So they offered that up. Okay. And then number 4 gets to the issue of just general, do they support the city getting into a partnership to provide the high-speed fiber? So the question was, if an internet fiber company came in and brought fiber to the home, and they needed 40% of the homes to make it financially viable. And if they didn't reach the 40%, the city would have to give a loan to the fiber company, to which the fiber company would pay back over time to the city. Would you support that partnership? And that was the question. So we had 41% said they would strongly support that partnership. 29% say they would somewhat support the partnership. So there's kind of this varying degrees of support. That is about 70% on to some level, one level or another. There's 11% that are neutral, and that can mean, they just don't care, or they could go either way. And then there's about 15% that are in the against. They would not support the city partnering in this fashion. And then 3% said they just don't know. They're not sure. So it's interesting on this question that to varying degrees, more people would support the city partnering than
would actually sign up.
Than said would actually sign up. And I think, if I'm gonna try to interpolate here, which is always dangerous, but I would say that some people probably are okay with bringing in more options to the city, even if they're not sure they're actually going to sign up for it. There's kind of this general feeling of competition in the market that is good for everyone. That might be the reason for that. Okay, and then the last question, I'm not going to go over. There was over 165 individual comments. So that's the same as 165 people getting up and Cassie having to read all their comments.
Oh.
Just kidding. So
okay, Cassie, you got 3 minutes each.
But they're written for you to read. Plus, there was over 170 comments from the other questions that had open-ended components. So a lot of input for you to weigh. And so,
do you have a word scatter plot like we've done in the past?
Yeah.
There is a word scatter plot on the.
There's 2 of them.
Yeah. So let me go into.
I thought I saw those.
There's 2 of them actually.
Yeah. So if we go. Yeah. Question 1.
Actual name, a word scatter plot, huh?
I think it's a word cloud, right?
I think word cloud is accurate.
Yeah, I think it's a word cloud.
The bigger, the more often it's said.
Yeah.
Yeah, the bigger and the darker.
I just thought that you chose those words out of the blue and just
no
bigger than
this is not my graphic design.
Big data at work crunching.
So yeah, so you can read into those how you feel. So the last thing I wanted to cover was the quadrants. So we have the capability, and you can see this just on the link that I gave you in the packet. This is a new capability that we have. I just got it today, actually. So it gives you an idea of how people answered based on the 4 quadrants of the city. And in my first kind of peruse through there were some subtle differences. For example, generally speaking, it looked like quadrant 4, which is the southeast end of the side of the city. Quadrant 4 is typically more content with their current internet and their speed.
You haven't talked to my neighbors.
Quadrant 4 has more options because they're closer to Layton.
Well, yeah, we're closer to City Hall too. We're closer to all the businesses.
So and then the other 3 were kind of mostly in the same camp for questions 1 and 2. Not a lot of difference again on question 2. So question 3 was interesting because you have a big jump in quadrant 2 of people who would sign up for the gigabit speeds. Looking at this, you've got 52% in quadrant 2, and you've got like 52% again in quadrant 1. people that would sign up for one of the options. And again, the quadrant 4 was kind of the least there to sign up. And most of the biggest number that said none was in quadrant 4. So, and then the last question here is, I think, tells a good story on the level of support. Quadrant 2 has the most that said strongly support. Quadrant 1 is the most in the whole support category with, the 4 and the 5. You're looking at about 70% of quadrant 1 supported it.
So can I ask a question really quick? So are these quadrants divided? I understand how they're divided geographically, but do they have the same level of participation from quadrant to quadrant? Is there a graph that shows participation level in each quadrant?
Yeah, so if you hover over here, it'll say, so quadrant 1, let's see, I don't know if it shows how many from each total, but for each specific answer, it tells you how many votes. So right here, quadrant 1, 39.
So they had 90.
Of 90, yeah.
So
that
one's 143. So they're pretty vocal. 93.
246.
Wow.
246.
That was
It's the
green or
ones all with
vocal.
good internet. They all know how to get on the internet. Well, they actually have good internet speeds. So definitely, yeah, there's a lot of participation there from that quadrant there.
That's actually really interesting.
It is.
Because that green represents a much larger portion of the vote than the other ones almost combined.
Yeah, their 70% holds a lot more weight than 70% of their quadrant.
And there may be actually more homes and more people in that quadrant as well.
Yeah.
So another thing we did, it really didn't change anything, but there's this invited filter. So this filters out people that were already on the list that got the invite versus people who joined during the survey. And so you can see that the people who joined during the survey
had something to say.
They were more ignited by the topic, right? So they're a little more biased, and so you can actually filter those out. But the number on the invited versus the total residents, locals only, it was only off by like less than 2%. So it really didn't there wasn't enough number of people that joined during the survey that it altered the results. So that wasn't really a factor. So that's the input from the survey. Our goals for the discussion was just to kind of go over go over the data and discuss where you want to take it from here. If you want to explore some kind of partnership with an internet fiber company or not, or where do you want to go from here?
So I think with 70% of the city supporting a partnership and 50% saying they want to sign up as soon as possible, I kind of think we should move forward with a partnership.
What are our guarantees of how fast they would install it? Because I know that's been a problem in other cities.
Well, I would be curious about putting out an RFQ to multiple fiber vendors and seeing what they can propose.
See, Corinne brings up the real problem, and that is that in lots of other cities, they start where the easiest access is, which probably in our city is the most satisfied quadrant 4, because they can there's already Utopia and Layton. So they'll provide it where there's less demand. The further out you get, the more demand, because the fewer options you have. So you notice that the people all the way out in quadrants 2 and 3, those people out there don't get serviced by as many options. So they're more interested in paying for something if they could get it. But historically, they'll be the last ones to get anything.
But the nice part is next year, we plan on having Antelope in pieces down to those areas, which could be very fortuitous. If we can put something in place, that actually provides an avenue for them to install that fiber all the way down to 3,000 in a year. If we can get this put together.
Don't we already have that with Utopia currently? Aren't they planning on doing that? Any place that's open already? Didn't we sign that in?
So there's more than one, fiber company out there. There's more than one arrangement that you can do. Those options are out there. Now, when you do, someone mentioned Utopia. So, I mean, specifically with them, Layton has it installed. Clearfield is in the process, and West Point is in the process. So there will be points of entry into Syracuse from three different areas.
But again, when I talk to West Point, they're struggling with the fact that they're getting it closer to other cities, and the further out you go, they could be years before they get that. And the people who expressed interest in it and said, I'll support it, are some of the people who are the furthest away from getting it, and probably 2-3 years out. And those people are really mad at the city because they said, hey, we voted for this, but now we're not going to be the ones that get it.
I just have another question too. Is it 30% of who it's available to? Do you know what I mean? Or is it, 40%? Or is it 40% no matter what pay into it?
Yeah. So in the survey, it's 40% of all residences.
Right. So but if it's not available, how can you sign up for it?
He's asking if the contract with the fiber company requires 40% of the people that can be accessed, or 40% of the city.
Right. That's
my question. If it's 40% of the city and not enough people can get access,
right,
we're behind the 8 ball already.
That's
another question that needs answering.
Yeah, and those are all things like I think like Jordan said can be work. We can work out through an RFQ or something like that, of how that's going to actually play out and how they propose that they would play it out. My understanding is that the 40% rule is based on once it's available to everybody. So there is no threshold as it's being constructed. It's only a threshold after it's available to the entire city.
So do you have any idea how much it's looking at? So say you had 30% sign up for it in the end, and then we are loaning the extra 10. Do we have any idea of dollar figures here?
We don't right now. My guess is if we were going to move forward and get serious about it, then these internet fiber companies would do their own kind of financial feasibility study of their own, and they would come up with the numbers, and then we could look at them.
So Brody, with regards to what you just said, then timeline, if we move forward, can you walk us through what that looks like moving forward? And if we want to time it with Antelope, is that even feasible? And then the other piece is we have other things that we're going to be putting towards a question with our citizens and a tax increase recently and all that. And I just want to make sure the timing makes sense for everybody.
Yeah. So, this isn't anything that's going to happen overnight. So as far as the projects, the UDOT projects, we've talked to UDOT about at least leaving, conduit or conduit space for telecommunications companies to run stuff down Antelope, whether now or in the future, whether it's Comcast, Utopia, CenturyLink, whoever. So that they can put that, and my understanding is that they're accommodating that in their design already.
Okay.
You know, as far as moving forward, it depends on how narrow or broad you want to go. If we want to entertain multiple vendors and multiple arrangements, there will probably be a little bit of an educational time frame for all of us to understand the various arrangements that can be made with these companies. It might involve inviting, you know, people to come in and speak with us. If you know New Utopia, you wanted to just go with them, you know, then we would say, hey, we're interested, and they would probably do a feasibility study and get us the numbers. But I would say if, you know, we would have this kind of discussion on how narrow or broad, then we would put together, if needed, we put together like an RFQ, or we would send out to the companies, you know, give us some proposals of how you would do this, show us your resume, so to speak, and we'll pick 2 or 3 out of the group that we feel would do the right job for us, and then we would get specific proposals from them.
So
Okay.
I just want to throw out this one question, not that, I mean, I kind of anticipate an answer here, but I have to ask. So because COVID has had such an impact on people's lives and education from home, working from home, is there any way that citywide infrastructure could be covered in some of the money we have in reserve from the CARES Act?
Yeah, we've been looking at that, and it's a little dicey on the need. I think this survey actually gives us some insight a little bit on you know, the fact that we have about a third of the city that says they desperately need faster internet, and half the city uses it for business or education. So
and that's why I was just wondering if there's any way to loop that in, then I would be more in favor of it, because you know, it's like a timed opportunity, you know.
And we've been looking at that. Prior to the survey, we felt like it was a little bit going out on the limb a little too far, because if you can't show that there's a need, that Syracuse residents can't get educated or go to work or do their job because they don't have internet. You know, if we were out in rural wherever and there wasn't internet or is extremely inadequate, I think it'd be an easier argument. But we're on the Wasatch Front. You do have internet options. It's just not always the best for the price.
Could you repeat that? My internet cut out.
So,
well played.
So, but bottom line, you know, because we do have the survey, there might be a window there, Dave, that we could look into that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I just know that along with that, when I went to a lot of these, I was really digging into this at the ULCT, trying to figure out if this was a good thing or a bad thing. And I know, in addition to what we've just talked about for education and everything, I know that a lot of cities said they actually saw an increase in economic development from companies knowing that they had access to, you know, 10 gig services and things like that. And so I think it actually is a selling point from an economic development viewpoint as well, because people want a fast connection if they're going to do any type of internet business, and it has to be stable.
Council, let me chime in here and see if we can give Brody some direction. Can we give him some direction?
I want to know more.
Yeah. Same.
I would like to continue going forward. I'd like to start getting some numbers in front of us so we can actually make informed decisions.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
What I'll do is I'll start putting together some options. We'll be in contact with some people that do this, and we can put together some options for you and come back to you at maybe the next work session.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, council. Let's move on. Let's go to a discussion on the amending the city code in relationship to sump pump discharge. Is that you, Robert?
Yes, sir. So there are areas throughout the city that are not served by land drain, gravity flow, and homes with basements. Some residents have purchased their own sump pump in order to keep their basements dry. Obviously we require for all new developments to have land drains in subdivisions where they have homes with basements. So we don't really see them in those areas. There are occasional areas where there may be an isolated situation where the subsurface water is difficult to handle even for the land drain system or that specific yard. And a lot of times these land drains, they'll flow year round. So it's not always just from rainstorms. It could be from sprinkler water that finally percolates down through the grass and down through the soil, or it could be just other things. So anyway, our ordinance currently allows a resident to have their own sump pump. The discharge, they're limited on where they can discharge. The ordinance says that they can discharge it onto their property. And I think a lot of concerns that we've seen and that residents have is the discharge water just gets recirculated down because they discharge it on their property, it percolates back down through, and then they're just repumping it and it just recirculates. And so residents will tend to locate them either in the park strips or near their sidewalk to try to get the favor the slope that goes away from the home. If it's, so our ordinance doesn't even allow it in the park strip currently. So any water that flows from a discharge would flow over the sidewalk, eventually fill up the park strip and kind of flood that out, and then over the curb and gutter and finally get to a storm drain. It has a long path to travel. And some of these pumps can flow pretty frequently, that where you'll see algae build up in the summer or ice in the winter, and it just becomes a safety hazard. I personally think, if they can get it closer to the storm drain, either allow them to put it in the park strip, I think that's okay, or up over the curb or something, so that it can get to the gutter as quickly as possible and as close as they can to the storm drain, shortest path to the storm drain. That's the safest way. But I'm coming to you with a potential consideration to update the ordinance to just improve the safety of it and allow these residents an ability to safely discharge this water. We don't have hundreds of them that, I know there's probably, I don't know, I could probably point out a couple dozen of them throughout the city. There may be more, I don't know. But like I say, this isn't something that the city owns or operates or maintains at all. It's something that the resident would own, operate, maintain their own pump. It's just, we just want it to be safe for us. And we also don't want to encourage people to have no solution and hook it to the sewers either, because that's not allowed. That just creates an overburden.
Let me just speak to that for a minute, because that is a huge problem. It happens throughout the entire district. It's not just our city, but sump pumps that discharge into the sewer system put an undue burden on the system. And especially when we have big rainstorms, we can tell that people are discharging into the sewer system because we have this mass overflow that comes, just hours after the ground saturates. And the system is designed to maintain a certain flow, and we never really get close to the threshold, except for sometimes we find that people are doing massive dumping through the sewer lines. They think it doesn't matter, but it really does. And the cost of having to process all that additional water that really is unnecessary is just eating up our tax dollars. So I just wanted to share that, because that's one of the unforeseen impacts, is the sewer costs drive up when this happens.
Okay. Thank you.
That is
Dick.
absolutely true. So this would this would allow the residents to discharge it to the storm drain, which is where our land drains discharge anyway. And storm drains do not go to the treatment plant. It goes directly to our canals and ditches that flow into the Great Salt Lake. So,
Jordan, do you want to lead us out here?
I think this is a great idea. I think anytime we can responsibly deal with water and give people options to improve this type of, cleaning up after obviously no one wants water in the basement. So yeah, a long story short, yeah, sounds good.
Okay.
I like it.
Lisa?
Yes, I agree. And I think that our staff is awesome for keeping an eye out for something that isn't even a city responsibility, but benefits and impacts our citizens. So thanks, Robert, for looking into that. And I think it's a good idea.
Corinne?
They've already said it all. Thank you, Robert.
Seth?
Really good.
Yeah, you guys are the experts. I trust you. And Dave supports it, it sounds like, so.
Well, I just, I just know what happens when they run it through the sewer, and it is a nightmare.
Is there really a giant flood at the halftime of the Super Bowl as well?
Yes, there is. Let me just tell
Interesting.
you that 2 hours after halftime, that is when we reach our peak every year. So
I don't get it. Can you explain?
really,
No, I'm kidding.
Consent agenda?
Yes.
I think, does this need to go to Planning Commission? Paul, are you still on? Does this have to go to planning?
It does not. It's not a development requirement, so that means it doesn't need to get that approval. It can be done here.
Okay, so it needs a public hearing though, right?
Nope.
No? Okay.
Hey, Robert, can I ask, is there any part of chapter 10 that you'd want to modify? Because I know that some of the chapter 10 and chapter 8 with the subdivision requirements talk about drainage and stuff.
This is 10.
Oh. Well, Paul,
This is
if he's modifying chapter 10 land use.
Yeah, sorry, I thought this wasn't 10. Yeah, it needs to go to the commission.
Okay.
All right. Let's send it there. Okay.
And then it'll have to be a public hearing, right? Or no, it still is not?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it would be a public hearing with planning commission.
And then it comes back to council, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds great.
Then we can put it on a consent agenda.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, if you want, we could put it on October 6th and make it back to city council on first part of October.
Sounds good.
Just by the hair of your chinny chin chin, but
Well, let's.
Can you see those?
No.
Let's do what we can to expedite it because we're getting to the end of the year. We don't want to run out of time. Okay, let's go to J, proposed CARES Act funding for daycare assistance to the school district. Is this Steve or you, Brody?
So this, you know what, I think this might be a notification. It's actually for the mosquito abatement district.
Oh,
Thank you.
I was a
It
little
was just
confused.
a recirculation of last time.
Yeah.
Yep, it's a typo. It's supposed to be for the Davis school, or for the one that Corinne requested over the weekend. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
My apologies for the late notice on that.
So can we still discuss it, or?
It's within 24 hours of our agenda. So, but at the same time, if it's a typo, good question.
I don't know. I just want to get clarification.
Paul,
It's
what do you
improvements
think about that?
We probably shouldn't. I mean, if people think it's about the Davis, yeah, it's different enough. I don't think we should talk about it.
Can I give
So
them
can
an
we
intro?
just put it on could Corinne report on it like during council reports at the end of the meeting, and then we can get direction to put it on the business meeting agenda?
Well, we don't want to just like talk about it. I mean, if you want to give the update, it can always go on the business meeting agenda. There's no rule that says it has to go on the work session first. So information could come through the report or through an email or things like that.
So I think I have a suggested solution for. So if you want to report on it, Corinne, on item K,
Okay.
and then I'll just email the council maybe a suggestion on it.
Perfect, thank you.
Sorry about that, council.
No worries.
Oh,
That happens.
It's not an item that we necessarily have to vote on unless there's for example, an interlocal agreement with Mosquito Abatement District.
Or we could just live with a lot more mosquitoes.
Corinne, why don't you bring us all up to date, will you? And then we'll, let's start with Corinne in discussion of future agenda and council announcements. And would you bring us up to date in that announcement?
Sure. As far as this is in direct, this is a request for some CARES funding due to direct costs due to COVID. Because, for instance, they have a large crew that has to go out and treat. And so they have PPE and everything. And then we had public restrooms that they normally use to out when they're treating. And those were all locked down because of COVID as well. So then we had to buy and purchase honey buckets and hand sanitizer stations and so forth in order to comply with the directions from the health department. And then trailers to run the honey buckets around and so forth. It's anyway, needless to say, there was, if you read the mosquito abatement report, some of it's in there. And there was a lot of debate over how to distribute the monies and should we use the same calculation that the CARES funding was per population, but then there's some people who are like, well, hey, we don't get sprayed near as much as Syracuse does. Actually, we should come up, but we're one of the most heavily sprayed areas because we have shoreline. And then, of course, other things along with that. So it all just comes down to direct costs from COVID. And these are not indirect costs because we know that there's other costs, but these are actual direct costs that were required by the health department in order to do their job. And so we decided to equally divide it between the 16 cities in the county. And it's a pretty small amount of, it's been adjusted to 1,700. He hadn't included the hand sanitizer stations in the first amount that I sent out, but it's 1,700, which is pretty small compared to any other requests.
Okay.
And there you have it.
Okay. Do you have anything else that you need?
Not at this time. Don't have anything with.
Okay. Jordan?
I don't have any announcements.
Okay. Seth?
I just was going to say two things. One, I had a discussion with the principal at Cook Elementary, trying to kind of keep a active, relationship and dialogue open with them. Is a little bit tough right now with the pandemic, but they don't have any specific needs. Or just grateful that the council's listening if something were to arise. And life has been crazy for them as expected with all of our other schools. But they're just kind of taking it a day at a time, trying to figure out which direction to go. And that's constantly changing for them. And so they're trying to be nimble about it. So that's kind of the update for Cook Elementary. And then the other thing I was just going to ask, and I know we get updates in like the manager's reports and stuff, but just for kind of the public benefit, getting maybe a quick update for Founders Park might be beneficial to hear publicly at some point. Hopefully it's not too many more meetings that it's done by, but if that was something we could hear.
Yeah, Brody, you want me to go ahead? I'll just go ahead.
You're muted. We agree, Brody.
Okay.
If it's up to the mayor, not me.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead. You guys are actually going to start seeing some things done, which is really nice. This has been a really frustrating process for all of us. I know it feels like that there's just been dirt being moved around, but infrastructure, plumbing, and electrical are completed. And this week we'll be finishing up the curb and gutter, and then onto the sidewalks to the middle of next week. The curb and gutter has to have a little time to cure, and then after that they'll start putting down the asphalt. We have found out pavilions were shipped today and will be here next week. And so they're working on the footings and those. So as soon as they get that done and they get here, they'll start putting those up. The pickleball company, very happy to report, is supposed to be here at the end of the week to get going on that. And playground's been shipped and will be here next week. And Lucky Dog Recreation is actually the ones who will install that. So when that gets here, it'll be stored for a little bit and then we'll get up. And the restrooms will be here by October 5th because all the plumbing and everything is ready to go. So that's been shipped. And we're pushing them for a deadline of no later than October 15th. So we'll be ready for the walk. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I'm a little nervous, but it seems like we'll start seeing a lot of things coming together the next few weeks.
Great.
Thank you, Krista.
You're welcome.
That concrete for the pickleball courts had me worried for the past while, since I know it's pretty sensitive to temperature. So
Yep, you and me both. But they're supposed to be here by the end of the week. That's the report.
good. It's good news.
The weather's good for the rest of the week. Good.
Seth, anything else?
Nope, thank you.
David?
So a couple of things. This past week, we had our most extensive sewer plant tour that's ever been given at our plant, because we had to go through with a couple of deep dive discussions on what's going to have to change for us to meet these EPA requirements that we've been talking about basically for 3 years. And so we went through how we're going to have to move our effluent point and how we're going to have to modify the plant to meet these new standards. As much as it sounds terrible, we're getting off better than every other plant in the state. It was just reported this week, Central Valley is going to end up spending, and that's down by Salt Lake, $600 million to adjust their plant. In the state, it's going to end up costing about $3 billion to adjust the plants. And so it is a major, major deal. We're getting off our pipeline, while it sounds expensive at $50 million or so, we're getting off so much better than the rest. And it is what it is. But we went through all that because we've been able to make a few modifications, including some new sludge gates and a few items there, some sensors that help our people stay safe, that really are going to bring costs down overall. So just letting you know that's what's going on out there. The Arts Council has been meeting extra times this month to try and review bylaws. Been a lot of discussion amongst the board members about how they should make adjustments. So just know that when that comes to you, there's going to be a lot of red lines, but it's coming from them. So and then one future agenda item I have to ask about, because I've been getting a lot of calls lately about development of park space in Craig Estates. And someone texted me today and said, we just heard from the city that the city council will never hear this, that it was decided by planning commission. Is that accurate? I just want to know, because I didn't know how to respond.
Yeah, I can speak to this. So it was a plat amendment, and plat amendments are heard by planning commission. It's an awkward, weird situation, but we've been consulting with Paul, and we think that they're within the boundaries of the law, and that we're acting appropriately. We did hold a public hearing, and it was even tabled, and while nobody's really excited about it, but they are taking the open space on Craig Lane and splitting it into lots.
How can that not be a city council thing if they're going to change the
plat?
The plat, yeah.
Yeah, a plat is an administrative kind of thing. If there was to be a rezone to something else, or an amendment to a development agreement or something like that. And nowadays, if they would have had a cluster subdivision, they would have had a development agreement. There would have been things on paper. But for some reason, back in the 90s, they didn't really do any of that. And from my understanding of the situation, that was the path forward.
So if there's any way that we can pull that to the council, I'd like to hear that because I'm concerned about the logic of something that had to have green space in their development agreement, eliminating the green space later and turning it into housing. So
Yeah, so the Craig Estates, they built above and beyond what the ordinance required for open space. And so the reduction of this, they were still within that. And then so it's a R2 zone. And at the time, R2 zone allowed a cluster subdivision as a conditional use. But in the meantime, the city revoked the cluster subdivision from R2. So it's what you call an existing non-conforming use. And the thing with existing non-conforming uses, they're essentially grandfathered in. So the small lots are grandfathered in, but you can't make an existing non-conforming use more non-compliant. So they couldn't, for example, take the small lots and make them any smaller, because the minimum lot size in a R2 is 10,000 square feet. So you have a bunch of lots that are, I mean, it's a PUD, you have like these common areas, but they're like 5,000 square feet. They're real small lots. So as long as their lots in the new subdivision weren't smaller than 10,000 square feet, they'd be compliant with the R2 ordinance.
So you're saying if I have a big lot and I'm in, say, an R2 zone, I could just split my lot whenever I want, and as long as I stayed, and I don't have to I don't have to get any approval?
Well, you got to get approval, but it goes through planning commission. If you don't like that process, you guys are the legislative body. It's in chapter 10 for administrative procedures. If you wanted to change that and see plat amendments, we see plat amendments all the time. You're certainly welcome to review them.
Because my issue with this is, we can't discuss this specifically, but this is green space for this area that there is no other green space in this whole area. And I admit this is an HOA property, so I get that. But at the same time, there's no other green space in this whole area without crossing a major road. And
I think Paul's probably getting nervous that we're talking about this.
Yeah, I would like to pull this into council if we can.
Yeah.
So you can't unilaterally do that. The code says that the land use authority is the planning commission. If someone wants to appeal it, then you are the appellate authority. So you could look at it. But again, this is an administrative decision. So if you can't make the decision based on we want to keep a park here, it's got to be code based.
But I agree with you guys. I think I don't like it either, and I wish that park could stay. And apparently the HOA, they approached the city and said, hey, we're struggling. We can't afford to maintain all this open space. Will you guys take it over?
Yeah, I remember that.
They were told no. And so they're, I don't know. They were just trying to stay solvent as a HOA.
So isn't also the problem too that we can't like retroactively change our ordinance to fit this current problem that they've already been heard on?
Once they've filed an application under state law, they're entitled to the land use regulations that are in effect when they submitted their application. So you can't change the code after that when they submit their application.
So we're not hearing this one, it sounds like.
Council,
or we have to have an appeal filed.
So my request would be for a future agenda item that we at least hear this so that it doesn't happen again. That we look into the code to see why this happened and how we could have some say over this kind of thing, because there are a lot of people who are wondering why the city council had no say in this. And until right now, I didn't really have any understanding of that.
It's a listed amenity for the neighborhood that just goes away. Brody, you're muted again.
I hear you. I don't like it either.
Brody?
Yeah, even with the application that they have with the planning commission, the city can still talk to them and sort of kind of not make an offer, but make a suggestion or make some kind of proposal. If we want them to keep it, then we can engage in a discussion with them about how to do that. And staff can set up a meeting and we can start having discussions.
I'm sure Cresta wants some more parkland, right?
No.
About this
But,
one.
Not this
but you
one.
know, it might be needed for the area. And I even tried I tried facilitating with the landowner with the church because it's right by the church. I'm like, hey,
Right.
church, don't you want to buy this? So I haven't heard anything back about that. But just because they subdivide it on paper doesn't mean that's what has to happen in real life.
Okay, well, I'm just bringing it up as a future agenda item because I didn't think we were going to get to hear it, and apparently we weren't, so.
Yeah, I don't think we can do anything to mitigate this particular case, but if you want to discuss it for future reference, I'm glad to put that on a work session. Do I have someone else who would like it there?
Sure.
Okay, we'll put it on a future. No, will you make sure that gets on a future work session, this agenda?
Yeah, just to be clear, is this,
It would be
do you want to
moving.
know what happened with that application, or do you want to discuss the?
No, I want to understand how things that don't go through the city or the city council that deal with land use. I just want to understand. I understand that there's conditional use permits, minor ones.
Yeah, you don't want to.
Don't come to us. I get that, but this isn't a land use. This is a complete. This is I don't know.
I
It's
think I
like,
understand.
yeah,
I just want to make sure I didn't prepare something that you didn't want.
it's not conditional. It's permanent, I guess is the objection.
My guess is, Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, the council would have to take a review of all plat amendments.
If that's what you want to do to take these types of things, it would need to be, yeah,
You have to be a
you'd have to
universal.
see more of those.
Let's put it on let's put it on for a future discussion, would you please?
Sure.
Okay. All righty. Let's see, who started that? Was that Seth?
Oh, no, that's not my fault.
That was Jordan?
Oh, sorry.
That was
Dave.
Dave.
Sorry,
That was
Dave's
Dave.
question.
Okay, all right. Dave, anything else?
No.
Okay, Corinne?
Oh, already reported.
Corinne did. Lisa?
No, and I just have one thing. I attended the chamber meeting this past week, and if there are any businesses that might need some help with some COVID-related issues and lack of money or needing some reimbursement, the West Davis Chamber of Commerce has some access to information to apply for grants. So if you are interested, you can contact the West Davis Chamber of Commerce. Ryan Rentmaster is the head of that right now. And that's it.
Thank you, Lisa. Tomorrow I'm coming over to your house for rolls and hot butter.
That's
Can I-
right.
Can I bring an application for the youth commission that I've
Yeah.
received personally and bring it to you?
Perfect.
I have one. Council, those of you who have melded yourself with me in regard to a tour of the waste, the MRF that is up at the landfill, that is at 12:30. I think Corinne, you did. Lisa, you did.
Where do we meet?
Do you know where, do you want to drive up together?
You know, I may not be able to drive with you. I'm going to be taking my parents to Ogden, so I'm not sure what time that is.
Let
So
me
I'll-
tell you how to get there. If you're coming up 193, just at the end of the property, looks like you're at the end of the runway for Hillfield. It is well marked. It says mixed waste recycling facility. Over on that side, there's a road that goes in right there. It goes right straight in to the center.
Is that on north or south side?
It's on the north side, and if you get to the light, you've gone too far.
Is it on the same plot as where the old burn plant was?
Yes, it's where the old burn plant was, but you had to access that through a different place.
I have no idea where this is.
Okay.
I'll ride with you, Mayor.
You want to ride?
I'll take it up too. Seth, are you going?
Yeah.
Great.
Corinne, it's along the east fence of Hill Air Force Base.
Hill Air Force Base, yeah.
Should we meet at the offices then, or?
Let's meet at the offices at 12.
Okay.
That sound good? And Lisa, you know where? Dave, are you coming?
I'll
I
figure it
think
out.
so. I'm gonna try.
Okay. Cassie has filed a public notice of us meeting together. So we don't have an issue. We can all be there. What the plan is that at 12:30 we will meet with them in their education facility, and then we'll go out and actually walk through the MRF, and you'll see them recycling aluminum, ferrous metals, plastics, two kinds of plastics, and cardboard. So it really is kind of a neat thing. Now, the requirement, and Steve, would you make those that are coming from the clerical, from administrative staff who are coming, no open-toed shoes. You have to be wearing shoes that are not open-toed. And the tour is about an hour and 15 minutes. It isn't horribly long. They will provide you with a safety vest and with a hard hat. You'll have to have a hard hat to be inside. I would like
it's what you get when you mix Dr. Seuss with a mechanical engineer.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah, Brody's seen it. I would like to report from COG. We had a COG meeting this time. Those have been kind of sparse during the COVID, but we held one. I attended by Zoom. Some of them it was in Farmington. Some of them were actually there and got fed. I had to make my own tuna fish sandwich. But the first tranche report on where money went that was given to the county by the city, and we will receive a report of who those businesses were that were helped in Syracuse and how much. And that report will be available sometime mid-October. We should have that. I want to thank Chief Garrett for his invitation to go watch about half of our police department qualify in shooting their weapons of choice. Well, the weapons they use. That was a delightful thing this morning. I really, really had a good time. I had the opportunity to sit and interface with all of the officers that were there, and it was really, really fun. Thank you, Garrett. I really enjoyed that. Thank you for letting me address them just a little bit there as they were eating lunch. And I would like to thank Aaron Byington, our fire department chief. I had a call this morning from a resident. The fire department responded to that home yesterday with an individual that had fallen, couldn't get back up again, and he fell again this morning. And Aaron, I got a really nice email text. It was a text message from the woman in that home thanking the police department or the fire department for responding on such short notice and not coming in doing code. She appreciated getting him up. That's all I've got. Brody, do you have something?
I don't have anything.
Okay. Council, I'm going to return us back to our special meeting agenda and call us back into that session. We've been in recess handling the work session. We do have need to reconvene in a closed session. I would take a motion to allow us to reconvene in a closed session. And Cassie, have you sent a new?
Yes, I did. I did send that out. Yep.
It was emailed?
Yes.
Okay, let's all leave and come back into closed session, joining that email.
Did you already do a motion, Mayor?
So moved.
Yeah, I was headed that direction. I got a motion.
Sorry.
Corinne, have a second?
Second.
Second by Lisa. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, let's go to closed session.
Okay, if everyone wants to leave this one, I'll let you in the other one.